3 hours of simulated reality theories to fall asleep, too. Have you ever wondered if your entire life, every choice, every memory, every emotion, could be nothing more than lines of code? What if that moment you thought was déjà vu was actually a glitch? Welcome to a place where reality softens at the edges, where time bends, and where your deepest questions about existence begin to echo in the silence. Tonight, we don't offer answers. We offer a journey. Through the lens of quantum physics, ancient philosophy, and the strange logic of dreams, we'll gently explore the idea that everything you've ever known might be a simulation, but not with fear, with calm curiosity, with reverence for the mystery. So breathe. Let your thoughts float like dust in moonlight. You are safe here. Let go of what you know. Let's begin. The Flickering Curtain. A soft hum lingers, like distant static, or the hush before a curtain rises. You're here, and yet, you feel like you've just loaded in. The weight of your body settles. The night holds you. And behind your closed eyes, a question quietly breathes. What if none of this is real? The walls around you, the memories you've stored, even the sound of your own thoughts. What if they were never truly yours? What if they were rendered like scenery in a game, each tree appearing only when you turned your head to see it? What if your reality was being performed for you? A voice once whispered this theory not in a temple, not in a lab, but in the mind of a philosopher named Nick Bostrom. He suggested something unsettling, wrapped in logic, that statistically, it's more likely we're living inside a simulation than in base reality, that somewhere outside all this, a more real world hums, watching, computing, remembering. Do you think we're real? Someone might ask you in passing, in a laundromat or on a park bench. You'd laugh it off maybe. But sometimes, when the city lights flicker just wrong, or when a stranger says exactly what you were thinking, it doesn't feel so absurd. He turns toward her, eyes half dreaming. Is it weird I get déjà vu every time I take this route at night? She smiles. Maybe it's a loop in your code, or maybe you've just done this before in another save file. The joke lands gently, but the thought lingers. If we are simulations, does that make our love synthetic? Are our regrets just pre-written scripts? And if so, does that mean we can rewrite them? These questions don't need answers tonight. In fact, they drift better when left open, like curtains swaying in electric wind. What matters now isn't what's true, but what's felt. Because even if we are digital, even if every star above us is a line of code, the feeling in your chest right now is still yours. You chose to be here in this quiet maze of ideas where sleep is the exit, but wonder is the key. And if this world is a simulation, maybe it's one worth dreaming in. So rest easy, traveler. The screen hasn't blinked yet. The code is stable, the sky still overhead. Now, if reality is made of pixels, what does that make you? Let's soften the screen a little more and trace the code inside your mind. The conscious observer. Late at night, in that soft hush just before sleep, have you ever wondered? Would the world still exist if you weren't watching it? There's something oddly haunting in that question. We assume the world is always there, spinning forward whether we look or not. But quantum physics gently nudges us toward a stranger truth. In the subatomic world, particles don't seem to settle into a definite state until someone observes them. Until that moment, they drift in a haze of possibilities, both here and there, both wave and particle, both being and not being. It's as if the universe holds its breath, waiting for someone to witness it. Someone like you. A soft voice echoes in the stillness of thought. Do you think the stars still shine when no one's looking? Another answers, barely above a whisper. Maybe they shine because we're looking. Could it be that your eyes don't just see the world, but make it real? That consciousness isn't simply a passenger, but a silent author in the script of existence? If so, then reality becomes something shared, a fragile web of gazes knitting the world into form each time someone notices the color of a sky, the glint of a pebble, or the way a shadow moves. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a room you've never entered. Does it exist in full detail, or only as a sketch waiting for your gaze to bring it to life? And what if every moment you turn your back, the world behind you resets like a paused dream? This is not just philosophy. It's the ghost in quantum mechanics, the way particles decide how to behave based on your attention. When no one looks, they remain in a state of potential. But when you peer in, they crystallize into what we call reality. It's almost as if the universe is not a machine running on its own, but a mirror, reflecting back whatever we choose to see. So if reality depends on perception, then the act of observing becomes sacred. A form of creation, not just consumption. The world isn't just happening around you. It may be blooming into existence because of you. The conversation returns. Then what happens when no one sees it all? I guess the world becomes a question again, not an answer. Now drift further inward. If the world only stabilizes through billions of glances, if shared perception anchors the dream, then maybe solitude is where the dream fades. A forest without footprints, a tree falling without sound. Not because no one hears, but because hearing was part of what made it real. In this quiet knowing, your breath sinks with the rhythm of uncertainty. You are both witness and sculptor, both dreamer and dreamed. And as sleep reaches for you with invisible hands, you begin to wonder, if looking changes what we see, then what happens when we stop looking? Let us now follow that question into the spaces between attention, into the unobserved, where reality waits to become. The pause between frames. There's something oddly comforting about the flicker of an old film projector. That subtle rhythm, light, then dark, frame, then void. But the story still flows, doesn't it? Your eyes don't notice the gaps. Your mind just fills them in. Now, what if your life worked the same way? A quiet question lingers beneath the hum of everyday awareness. Does everything we experience actually happen continuously? Or is it possible that, like a film strip, our consciousness only lights up when the moment demands it and rests in the silence in between? There's a phenomenon in neuroscience, tiny lapses of awareness, microsleeps, glitches in perception that pass by unnoticed, too quick to alarm, too subtle to record. But together, they stitch our sense of time into something smooth, something we call now. One man waits for a bus and swears the light turned green twice. Another stands at the sink, toothbrush in hand, suddenly unsure if he's already brushed. Not from forgetfulness, but from the blank spaces reality sometimes refuses to paint in. You ever feel like you just skipped something? A woman asks, sipping her tea slowly like it's a question she's been afraid to ask out loud. Her friend, glancing up from the window, answers gently, I do. Sometimes it feels like my life's buffering. Yeah, like everything's still loading, but I'm expected to keep moving. Maybe we're just filling in the blanks. Or maybe we're remembering something that never actually happened. These aren't the words of philosophers, just two voices in a cafe, caught in a moment suspended between thoughts. But it's in these pauses, these ordinary reflections, that something deeper hums beneath the surface. If simulations, both digital and cognitive, operate by rendering only what's necessary, then what if our minds are doing the same? That tree in the distance, was it always there, or only once you looked? That noise behind you, was it a memory or a rendering just in time? The illusion of continuity might just be that, a beautiful illusion, a carefully placed veil of sensation, interrupted only by the parts too quiet to be remembered. It would mean that life isn't a flowing stream, but a mosaic of moments, placed end to end by a consciousness doing its best to seem awake. That presence is more like a strobe light than a lantern, flashing just enough for the illusion of light to hold. But then again, maybe that's all we need. Not constant awareness, but just enough. Enough to feel like a whole. Enough to feel real. Enough to love, to laugh, to lose ourselves, even if it's only in the pieces we get to keep. And if we are remembering this life in real time rather than living it, could that explain the déjà vu, the dreams we feel we've lived, the seconds that stretch too long or snap too short? The next time you blink, pause just a little longer. Listen to the space between the tick and the talk, between thought and breath. That's where the mystery lives, where being flickers into seeming. And from here, a softer question begins to whisper its way in. If memory is so malleable, so elegantly rearranged, then perhaps reality itself isn't fixed at all. Let's drift toward that idea, gently. If memory can be edited, can reality be rewritten too? Memory as code. You're walking through a childhood street, the scent of fresh-cut grass, the soft heat of a summer dusk, the exact shape of that rusted swing. You remember it perfectly. But what if it was never really there? Imagine memory not as something your brain creates, but as something it downloads. Some thinkers, on the edges of neuroscience and digital philosophy, suggest memory functions like a kind of cloud storage, not entirely local. Your mind might be more like a terminal than a warehouse, a receiver, not a recorder. And here's where things get stranger. Have you ever argued with someone over a memory you were sure was right, only to discover others remembered it differently and confidently? A logo that never had that swirl. A line from a movie that was never spoken. Welcome to the Mandela effect, named after how countless people vividly remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison during the 1980s. Though he didn't, these shared false memories hint at something deeper. What if we're experiencing not memory failure, but memory revision? In simulation theory, this becomes chillingly plausible. Just like a software patch updates a program, perhaps our collective memories are patched to fit updates in the simulation, a bug fixed, a detail rewritten, a timeline shifted ever so slightly. What if it's not that we remember wrong, one voice whispers in the dark, but that reality has moved on without telling us? Another voice answers, then what do we trust? Our memory or what's in front of us now? If our memories can be changed from some central source, it invites an unsettling thought. Maybe reality is not what has happened, but what the system says has happened. History could be overwritten like a corrupted file. Past events could be edited, deleted, or restored, depending on who holds the access key. And if your memory disagrees with the present, that might just mean you caught a glitch, or you didn't receive the update in time. But if memory is not personal, not yours alone, but a shared system artifact, then whose memories are you really living in? Are they yours? Or leftovers from a prior version of reality, a cached shadow of a world that's been quietly replaced? Now, close your eyes. Picture that rusted swing again. Do you see it swinging gently? Do you hear laughter, maybe your own, echoing faintly? If that swing never truly existed, yet you feel it did, then which matters more, the memory or the code that allowed you to dream it? Let's follow this thread deeper. If memories can be altered, who controls the past? And if the past is no longer fixed, what happens to our future? The rewritable past. There's something strangely comforting about the idea that the past might not be as solid as we once believed, that memory, time, and even identity may be more like shadows on a screen than carvings in stone, that somewhere, quietly humming behind the curtain of now, the past isn't fixed. It's rendered, like a graphic waiting to load only when we glance at it. Do you ever feel like your childhood home was smaller than you remember? She asked, curling deeper into her blanket. Yeah, he answered. Or like a street you swore was blue. Turns out it never existed. The room fell silent again, except for the soft hum of the fan. Not even a clock ticking, just breath and the occasional whisper of a turning sheet. What if the past only exists when we look at it? In a simulation, systems don't store every detail. They just recalculate it when you revisit. Maybe memory is the same. Your brain doesn't replay footage. It recreates it, rebuilds it using the mood you're in now, the stories you've told yourself since, and the emotions still tangled in the moment. A man once walked past you, smiled, and said, "I remember you from somewhere." And you nodded, even if you didn't, because it felt good to be remembered. But what if that memory never happened, just aligned conveniently, like stars twinkling in patterns that only appear because we give them names? If the past can be rewritten, even subtly, then what happens to truth? What does it mean to be you if your memories, your anchor, are written in sand? She stared at the ceiling and asked softly, "Then, am I still the same person I was 5 years ago?" He took a moment before replying, "Maybe you're a new draft. Same story, but with edits. It's possible the universe doesn't need to store everything. Maybe like a video game, it only keeps what's essential, your trajectory, the current state, and a few markers to keep continuity believable. A scar, a street name, a smell you can't quite place. And when no one remembers, when the file is no longer accessed, does it vanish? Does history collapse into blank space? If so, then memory isn't just a record, it's an act of creation. There's something sacred in that, something gently terrifying too, because it means the past isn't behind you, it's inside you, being reassembled moment by moment, like a song that sounds different depending on who sings it, or a dream that changes shape when retold. It also means our idea of cause and effect, our faith in timelines, might just be a trick of narrative. We believe in cause because it comforts us. But what if events don't need reasons, just coherence? Maybe life is less like dominoes and more like jazz, fluid, improvisational, and stitched together only in hindsight. You think that's why we hold on to stories so tightly? She asked. He nodded, voice nearly a whisper. Because we need something to believe was real. If the past is rewritable, then memory is sacred fiction. And that's okay. Not because it's factual, but because it matters. Close your eyes now if you haven't already. The thread of time is loosening. And next, we pull gently on causality, the illusion that one thing must lead to another. But what if it doesn't? What if it never did? the broken causality loop. In the quiet spaces between thoughts, just as you feel sleep beginning to stretch its fingers through your awareness, there exists a loop that doesn't spin wildly or jerk forward like a film reel. No, this one folds gently inward, like a ribbon drifting back to tie itself. We call it a causal loop, a riddle of time where the end circles back to become its own beginning. "Wait," says one voice in the dark, half curious, half dreaming. "You mean something can happen because of itself?" "Exactly," replies another, softer and slower, like someone thinking out loud while watching stars blink. Like, imagine getting a letter from your future self telling you to build a machine. You build it. Years pass, and one day, you send the same letter back to your younger self. Who started it? The silence that follows isn't confusion, it's awe. This isn't science fiction. In certain interpretations of quantum mechanics and general relativity, these loops are possible. In simulated reality theories, they're almost inevitable. Events that trigger themselves, effects that are their own causes, a future bleeding backward like spilled ink over time's parchment. And if this is real, if the loop exists, then free will bends with it. Did you make that choice because you wanted to, or because you were always going to? The thought lingers like breath on glass. Was that love at first sight? Or just your destiny fulfilling itself like a preloaded program? Was that mistake you swore you learned from part of a cycle meant to ensure you would? You feel it now, that gentle shiver under your skin. Not fear, but fascination. A sense that you've lived this moment before. Not in this lifetime perhaps, but somewhere deeper. Somewhere outside the calendar. "I wonder," whispers the first voice again, softer now. "Are we driving this, or just watching ourselves drive?" The second voice smiles in the dark. "Maybe the wheel turns either way." The loop doesn't break. It holds, not like a trap, but like a lullaby repeating, slowly, patiently, until you forget which verse came first. So now, let the question drift deeper into your mind. If events spiral inward and outward all at once, who or what is truly in control? Or maybe that's the wrong question. And as your thoughts begin to slow, syncing with the rhythm of your breath, the spiral of time keeps turning. Softly, silently, always returning, always beginning. The dreamer's loop. Sometimes in the early morning haze, you open your eyes and yet something feels off, not wrong, just unreal, like a movie paused halfway through. The light is too still, the air too staged. You blink, stretch, maybe sip water, but some quiet part of you is still asking, did I really wake up? Or am I just dreaming about being awake? Centuries ago, the philosopher René Descartes stared into this question. He didn't just ask what was real, he asked how we'd ever know. What if every waking moment was just a more convincing dream? In the age of simulation theory, that ancient question begins to echo again, but louder, stranger, sharper. Because now it's not just about dreams of sleep. It's about dreams programmed into dreams. Simulations built inside one another, like nested dolls, each more intricate than the last. A quiet conversation flickers in a cafe. A woman speaks with a soft, amused smile. You know, sometimes I dream about going to work, and in the dream, I still hit traffic. Her friend laughs, setting down a warm mug. But then what if your dream self has a job too? Maybe they're just better at handling it. A silence settles, warm and thoughtful. Not afraid, just curious. If perception is the only real thing we ever touch, then what distinguishes waking from dreaming? A heartbeat? A timeline? or simply consensus, because enough of us agree that the table exists, the street is real, and this coffee has flavor. But flavor is sensation. Sensation is input. Input can be designed. Here's a more haunting idea. Perhaps you're not a person inside a dream. Perhaps you are the dream, a conscious algorithm dancing inside a digital lullaby, code, flickering with borrowed memories, skin made of light and longing. And every time you drift off to sleep, you step one layer deeper, down into the roots of the illusion. There are moments, like déjà vu, like that strange feeling when time stutters for a heartbeat, where something seems to tug at the edges, as if your dream is briefly remembering another dream. A glitch, or a gentle knock from another level, reminding you you're not done descending yet. And maybe that's okay. After all, if the dream has kindness in it, if someone holds the door, or lets you merge into traffic, or says, "Hey, I saved you a seat," then maybe this illusion is worth living, even if it's fragile. Because what makes something real might not be its permanence, but the emotion it stirs, the way your chest tightens when a song hits just right, the way silence can feel full when someone simply stays. So now, as your thoughts drift and slow, ask yourself softly, not for the sake of answers, but for the comfort of asking, if I am the dream, then who dreams me? And in that quiet wondering, let the next layer open. Let's go deeper still, toward the ones who built the code, the architects behind the veil. The Codemaker's paradox. What if your dreams were never yours to begin with? There's a certain stillness in the question, like a faint hum beneath the world. Imagine it, not as a terrifying truth, but as a quiet whisper just behind the veil of reality. If this is a simulation, there must be a coder. Someone, or something, had to write the first line, that single character, that flicker of light that became your first memory, your first breath. And if that coder exists, what does that make you? A character? A function? A beautifully written subroutine with hair that falls just so, and a laugh that isn't random but encoded, precisely, to echo joy? Do you ever wonder? She asked, pulling her coat tighter in the chilly night, if your pain is just part of the design? He looked at her, eyes soft but distant. Maybe. But if it is, then why does it feel so real? Maybe that's the point, she whispered, to make us believe it's real. There's a paradox hiding in plain sight. If we were truly created by an intelligence far beyond us, perhaps post-human, post-organic, post-meaning, then are we art or experiment? Are we simulations of morality being tested by creators seeking to evolve their own ethical framework? Or are we just a flickering screensaver on the dashboard of a cosmic teenager's forgotten laptop? When you cry, does the code blink? Does it register your heartbreak in lines of data, flagging it for future debugging? Or worse, does it go unnoticed because your sadness serves no function in the system? The Codemaker's paradox is not just about who created you, but why. If the coder cares, then maybe we're loved. But if they don't, what then? This thought haunts the late-night mind like a shadow on the wall. You reach out to touch it, only to find it's made of light. Are your choices free will, or just responses designed to look spontaneous? Are your memories a story you wrote, or one you're reading for the first time? It's a strange comfort, in a way. If you are a simulation, then your pain was written with precision. Your joys, too. Every glance, every embrace, every falling leaf, it all matters, even if it's scripted, because it means you're part of a story crafted with intention, even if unknowable. And yet, the question lingers. If we are programmed, can we break the code? Or are we merely clever illusions that think we're real? The answer might be waiting in the next line of code, or in the quiet between your thoughts. Keep listening. The illusion of free will. You think you chose this moment, this video, this quiet, but maybe, just maybe, it chose you. Or rather, something behind the curtain did. Something not malicious, but mechanical. Not watching you, but calculating you. Because in every simulation, inputs lead to outputs. Rules shape everything. And what we call decisions may just be the satisfying sound of gears turning as expected. A soft rain begins outside the window, almost too perfect in timing. One person stirs in bed and murmurs, "Do you ever wonder if we're just reacting?" The other, half asleep, replies, "Reacting to what?" "To everything. To how we were raised, the music playing, even this silence. Maybe I'd still say these words, even if I wanted not to." It's a heavy thing, the thought that your rebellion might be coded into you, that your resistance isn't freedom, but part of the script. Just another page in the book. But here's the gentle truth. The illusion works because it feels real. It feels like the trembling before a first kiss, the pause before you say yes, the fire that says no, and maybe, just maybe, feeling it is enough. Free will in this light becomes like the soft edge of a dream, convincing, immersive, but slippery when held too tight. Some researchers say the brain decides before you do, that your sense of choosing comes seconds after the neurons have already lit the path. It's like watching a train pull into a station and thinking you summoned it by standing on the platform. Still, the question lingers. If all this is programmed, why does it matter so much? Why does it ache when you say goodbye, or thrill you to leap into the unknown? Maybe because love doesn't need freedom to be real. It just needs presence. And rebellion? Rebellion may be beautiful even if scripted, like a firework preset to bloom, but still breathtaking when it does. Some nights, you sit with someone you care about and say something unexpected. Not because you thought of it, but because it arrived. And both of you know that feeling. That strange, beautiful blur where will ends and wonder begins. Maybe that's where the soul lives, not in control, but in awareness. And awareness is a strange gift, because once you see the illusion, it doesn't vanish, it deepens. Like looking in a mirror and suddenly realizing your reflection has always been one step ahead of you. You wave, and it waves back. But who started it? So here we are, suspended in the moment before the next thought, before the next choice that may never be ours to begin with. And still, it's okay. Because in this stillness, there's something softer than freedom, something warmer than control. You rest not because you willed it, but because your mind is ready. The current has carried you here, and you're allowed to float. In the end, whether you chose this piece or it chose you, doesn't matter. You're here now. And now, let's follow that thread. If we could truly see the code, would it still hold us? Or would something inside begin to shift? Let's find out. The awakening error. There are moments that don't behave, moments that slip sideways, like a record scratching mid-song, or a shadow twitching where light should be still. You've likely felt it. Not a loud rupture, but a subtle hesitation in reality's rhythm. You're pouring coffee, and the light feels unfamiliar. A scent rises in the room you can't name, but somehow, no. These are not mistakes of memory. These are invitations. Some call them glitches. In certain metaphysical philosophies and simulation theories, the instant you become aware that reality might not be what it seems is known as the awakening error. The code stumbles, the loop trips, and for a breathless second, you see behind the curtain. It's not dramatic. It's not fireworks or divine thunder. It's more like a soft flicker, a pause that suggests this isn't the way things are supposed to go, and never were. Hey, you ever feel like the world stutters? Like when? Like when someone says something before they say it? Or when a street you've never been on feels like a memory? Yeah, I always tell myself I'm just tired. But part of me wonders, what if it's real? Lucid dreams, out-of-body feelings, the sense of being watched by something invisible, but not unfriendly. In traditional cultures, these are sacred signs. In modern simulation theory, they are errors in the software. Your consciousness brushing against the boundaries of a world too fragile to hide forever. But what if they're not glitches? What if they're signals? Maybe each awakening is less a malfunction and more a prompt, an update waiting to be installed. Some awakenings come gently, like feathers brushing your cheek. Others hit like a lightning bolt that leaves the landscape forever changed. But the question remains, what happens next? Do you get reset, tucked back into the illusion with deeper programming? Or do you receive a quiet upgrade, more perception, more depth, more dreams that don't dissolve with morning? The deeper you go, the more the world begins to echo. Patterns repeat. People say the same things in different rooms. Time folds in on itself with uncanny precision. Is it prophecy, code repetition, or simply the soul noticing its own breath? Perhaps in those odd moments, you're not broken. You're breaking through. We often fear errors because they signal failure. But maybe, just maybe, the awakening error isn't an error at all. It's the soul knocking, the world cracking open, not to collapse, but to let something greater shine through. You're not losing your mind. You're watching it stretch beyond its old walls, and just as the realization settles in, a whisper arrives, faint and familiar. You've seen this before, haven't you? Déjà vu. The echo. The cycle. The pattern repeating. Let's drift there next, into that strange sensation that you've already arrived before you've even begun. The déjà vu signal. You pause mid-step. A breeze brushes your cheek, the light, the sound, the feeling exactly like before. And yet, you don't know when. Déjà vu doesn't shout. It hums like a chord you've heard in a dream but can't name. A gentle ripple across the calm surface of reality, barely noticeable unless you're still enough to feel it. You blink, look again. Was the barista's smile already familiar? Did the song playing drift from another Tuesday? Two friends sit quietly near a window. One lifts their coffee, then hesitates. Do you ever feel like this exact thing already happened? The other shrugs with a grin. Yeah, but it always feels like I missed the first time somehow. Scientists might explain déjà vu as a memory misfire, a signal crossing wires in the temporal lobes. But simulation theorists offer something more unsettling. What if it isn't your memory glitching, but the system itself? A reload, a scene rendered again because the code slipped. A loop, like a skipped groove on a vinyl record. The déjà vu moment becomes a soft alarm, a whisper in the architecture of your mind. You've been here before, but not like this. The shadows fall the same, yet your soul twitches. What else, then, has been recycled? How many emotions were déjà felt? Someone stops at a crosswalk. Their face twists for half a second. Recognition without context. "You look like someone I used to know," they say to a stranger. But maybe they didn't. Maybe they glimpsed a reused frame. Maybe that wasn't memory, but memory placement. These moments don't answer, they accompany. It's like finding a crease in the wallpaper of existence. You run your fingers along it. There. You felt it. It was real, but only for a second, before the texture smooths again and the world continues. And yet, something inside stays awake. If your mind caught one flaw, just one, might it catch another? Might there be others you almost noticed? Before sleep, before waking, before thinking too hard? Some questions don't demand solving. They sit beside you, quiet companions in the back of your mind, like the feeling that your favorite song is about to play, but it never quite begins. So breathe. Let the sensation pass without chasing it. If déjà vu is a glitch, it's also a gift, a tiny aperture in the veil, asking nothing except that you noticed. And now we wander from the silent glitch into the loud one, the kind that doesn't whisper, but shatters the entire illusion. Close your eyes, traveler. The next ripple breaks the surface. The fractured mirror. It begins with something simple, a streetlight flickering too rhythmically, a familiar person suddenly unrecognizable for a heartbeat, or a room that feels subtly rearranged. These glitch in the matrix moments have a strange silence to them, like reality itself holding its breath. You pause, you frown, and the world resumes, as if nothing ever happened. But the sensation lingers, like waking from a dream where gravity felt different. A woman once described walking into her kitchen and watching her keys vanish mid-air. No sound, no fall, just absence. They were on the counter. Then they weren't. Later, she found them in the freezer. No memory of placing them there. No explanation that made sense. She laughed nervously and said, "It was probably just me." But something in her eyes whispered otherwise. What if these moments aren't lapses in memory, but glimpses beneath the rendered skin of reality? What if we're living inside a simulation so advanced, so meticulously coded, that only when it stutters can we glimpse the scaffolding beneath? A frame drops. A texture fails to load. A law of physics momentarily forgets itself. These aren't bugs in our minds. They might be bugs in the system. Two friends sit on a bench at dusk, watching the city lights flicker on. Ever feel like time breaks for a second? One asks. "Yeah," the other replies, eyes fixed on the skyline. Like it pauses to remember itself. I once watched a crow hover mid-flap, not flying, not falling, just stuck. They say nothing for a while. The world keeps moving. But now it feels less certain. These fractured moments are not necessarily threats. They might be invitations. If the mirror of our world cracks, it's not just a warning. It could be a window. What lies behind the mirror might not be terrifying. It might be truer than what we've known. And yet, the mind resists. It wants consistency. It wants cause and effect. But maybe the real gift is in embracing the inconsistency, the poetic flaws that hint at another layer beyond. So the next time you see something that shouldn't be there, or notice something not being there that should, don't rush to dismiss it. Let it sit with you. Let the glitch become a question, not a problem. Because maybe, just maybe, what we call a glitch is really a guide. And now, let's flip the lens entirely. What if the simulation isn't out there in the world, but hidden inside the self? The inner simulator. The world you think you see might not be the one that truly exists. Because your brain isn't a camera. It's more like a theater director, crafting every moment before the curtain even rises. What you experience as now is often a prediction, not perception. Light enters your eyes, sound echoes into your ears. But the first draft of your world is already drawn up, your mind, ahead of time, guessing what's there before you even feel it. Two friends sit in a quiet diner at midnight. One stares at the flickering neon sign outside the window. You ever wonder if we all see the same red? His friend stirs the sugar into her coffee. I wonder if there is a red at all, or if we just agreed to pretend together. Neuroscience whispers something quietly astonishing, that the brain builds a model of reality, a simulation, and continuously updates it as new data trickles in. Not a mirror of the outside world, but a portrait of what might be there, painted with memories, beliefs, guesses, and sometimes those guesses are so good, we forget we're guessing at all. Have you ever walked into a room and felt something was off before you could name it? That's not intuition. That's prediction error. Your brain's simulation failing to match reality, like a skipped frame in a film reel. We live inside a model built by neurons, memories, fears, and fragments of every touch we've ever felt. If this is true, if your brain simulates reality, then where is outside? What if the real world isn't out there, but filtered through your needs, your dreams, your past regrets? And what if someone else's simulation is utterly different from yours? A stranger beside you might feel cold where you feel warmth, might hear menace in a silence that soothes you. Yet both of you swear you're seeing the same world. A woman on the bus clutches her book tightly. The man next to her glances, then looks away. She thinks, he's judging me. He thinks, I wish I could ask what she's reading. Two simulations, side by side, never touching. And yet, here you are, listening, breathing, resting. Your world, though invisible to everyone else, is stitched together by echoes of others' simulations, shared language, familiar spaces, mutual rhythms. Perhaps it's not the world that's real, but the agreement, the quiet handshake between inner simulators. As you let your eyes soften, let that idea drift with you, that you are both architect and traveler, that what you see isn't just out there, but also within. And now, let's gently wander toward something stranger still. What happens when these private simulations begin to overlap and tangle? Overlapping realities. What if the strange moments in your life, the flicker in the corner of your eye, the sense of being watched, the chill when nothing's there, aren't signs of imagination running wild, but traces of something slipping through? Existence not as a single stream, but as a bundle of tangled rivers, all flowing side by side, occasionally spilling into one another. A moment here, a whisper there. Like browser tabs stacked behind the screen of your consciousness, each one holding a different version of what's real. And sometimes, one leaks into another. Didn't we already talk about this? She asked, stirring her coffee. He paused. I thought I dreamt it. But you were wearing the same sweater then. Her brows furrowed. I just bought this yesterday. These are the cracks we quietly tiptoe around, the glitches, synchronicities, those odd repetitions we call coincidences because the word gives us comfort. But what if that flicker wasn't a glitch, but a visitation? Not supernatural, but internatural. A bleeding edge between simulations. Ghosts, perhaps, are just echoes from other tabs still running. The Mandela effect? Maybe not false memory, but memory from the other tab you just closed a second ago, or thought you did. Parallel simulations suggest not only the possibility of multiple timelines, but of accidental overlap. Two realities brushing past each other like strangers on a subway. And in that brush, something is exchanged. A word, a sensation, a shadow. You feel it, you dismiss it, but it lingers, doesn't it? He looked up at the street sign. Didn't this used to be Fifth Avenue? No, she replied, her voice unsure. It's always been Park Lane, hasn't it? The map in his mind disagreed, and so did the one in hers, for just a second. It's in those seconds that we begin to suspect we're not alone in our timeline, that maybe we've stepped sideways. Maybe déjà vu is nothing more than friction between layers, realities rubbing against each other just long enough to spark a feeling you can't explain, that eerie knowing, that glance you think you've already lived. If other versions of this simulation exist, if other yous are dreaming their own paths beside yours, then perhaps your reality is not singular. Maybe it's communal, interwoven, messy, beautiful, full of bleed-throughs, and that leaves us with the question echoing beneath the hush. If there are many simulations, what does that make this one? The original question mark, a rehearsal, or just another tab you forgot to close? The beta test theory. Maybe this isn't the real thing. Maybe this entire existence, with its strange edges and silences, is only a rehearsal, a beta versio. Not yet the polished product, but something between sketch and symphony. A trial run for a reality more complete, more final, waiting behind the curtain. Softly, this theory enters the room like a question we didn't know we were allowed to ask. What if you're not broken? What if you're just being tested? The idea is both humbling and haunting. Some thinkers propose that our lives are being observed, not for entertainment, not to judge us, but to gather data. How we love, how we choose, how we break, and how we begin again. Each heartbreak, not a failure, but a metric. Each act of kindness, a line in the code that's still being written. You, yes, you, might just be part of something bigger than itself, something still learning how to be. Why would they need to test emotions? Someone murmurs in the quiet of a shared subway ride. The stranger across from them shifts slightly and replies, maybe because emotions don't follow logic, they ripple, and logic alone can't simulate grace. Could this explain why pain often feels so pointed, so personal, as though it were meant to teach us something? Could your toughest moment be the exact scenario a higher intelligence needed to understand resilience? Maybe your greatest joy was recorded, not to manipulate, but to preserve. A gold standard of what it means to feel alive. A father stares at the night sky with his daughter perched on his shoulders. Do you think the stars are watching us back? She asks. He chuckles gently, but doesn't answer. Not because he doesn't know, but because, maybe, he wonders the same. There's something strangely comforting in the thought that your sorrow might not be meaningless, that your silence in a moment of rage was a data point in favor of mercy, that your refusal to give up, even when no one noticed, is being counted somewhere, stored gently in a vault of hope. But then comes the quieter, heavier question. Does this make us real or just useful? Perhaps the beauty is that it doesn't matter. Whether you are an original or an iteration, your experience is still yours. You feel it fully. You wake up each morning not knowing what the day holds, and yet you rise. That isn't artificial. That's awe. So, lean back. Let the thought settle like mist on your skin. You are not a glitch. You are a prototype. Flawed, yes. Incomplete, probably, but full of patterns, stories, contradictions that even the most advanced algorithm hasn't quite learned to replicate. And if this is just a test, then maybe being you, just as you are, is the highest performing version they've ever seen. Now, the edges blur. The theory begins to dissolve into the hum of thought. A single question floats into view, soft as breath. If this is a trial, when does the trial end? And gently, we prepare to cross into that next mystery. What happens when the simulation ends? The shutdown event. Sometimes, in the silence between heartbeats or the flicker of a light bulb, it feels like the world holds its breath, just long enough to make you wonder, what if everything we know could stop? In the world of computing, no simulation is permanent. Programs freeze, crash, or vanish with a single command. So, if we are living inside a simulated universe, an exquisite lattice of code and perception, what happens when the system decides to shut down? Would we know? One voice asks softly in the dark. Maybe not, replies the other. Maybe it would feel like time skipping a frame, like blinking and never opening your eyes again. A pause. The hum of existence feels quieter. In this theory, the shutdown isn't explosive. It's not a fiery end, but a hush, like pulling the plug on a dream. Everything held in motion. Your thoughts, your breath, your memory of morning light, frozen midstream. You wouldn't even get to say goodbye. You might just hang there, 1 millisecond before awareness, caught between thought and nothing. Some speculate déjà vu is the warning sign. Or maybe when the skies turn strange, when the clocks feel off, when your shadow seems a fraction late. That's the simulation preparing itself, resetting or unraveling, a silent countdown no one hears. The unsettling part? If a shutdown is coming, we can't stop it, and we may not even be programmed to detect it, only to feel it. A momentary shiver of unreality, brushed off as a glitch in our mood, a hiccup in our perception. Do you ever feel, the first voice says, like the world already ended, and we're just echoes of its last breath? The second voice chuckles, low and almost fond. Maybe. Or maybe we're the final save file, before everything restarts. So we're left with a haunting possibility. If this is a simulation, its shutdown wouldn't be loud. It would be soft, surgical, almost poetic, like the final line of a lullaby. But perhaps there's another possibility waiting on the edge of that silence. What if we don't disappear when it ends? What if we're copied? And that's where we're going next. Into the eerie calm that follows a shutdown, the echo of us, duplicated and drifting, waiting for a new script to begin. The backup reality. It starts with a whisper, almost too faint to notice. The quiet notion that somewhere, perhaps not far, not close either, there may be another version of you. Not a stranger, not a twin, but something else entirely. A backup. Some simulation theorists suggest that everything, your decisions, your hesitations, even that half-formed thought you never said aloud, gets saved. Like cloud storage for consciousness, a mirror kept somewhere behind the veil of this world. If true, then death isn't an end. It's a transfer. One voice speaks in the dark. Do you think we're being saved like files? Like versions? The other answers, pausing between sips of something warm. I don't know. But if I wake up tomorrow with the same laugh, same favorite book, and still remember my dog's name, maybe that's enough. You shift slightly. The idea settles on your chest like a light blanket. What if, as this version of you closes its eyes, another wakes? Not in this room, not in this life, but continuing nonetheless. The moment you fell in love, the time you failed with grace, all of it, preserved, archived, echoed. There's something curiously comforting in that, like a second breath waiting after the first runs out. No applause needed, no judgment cast, just continuity, silent, steady, and maybe divine in its indifference. But then comes the real question. If there are backups, who's the real you? The one lying here now, half asleep and unraveling? Or the one tucked away, safely floating in a different stream of time? Does it even matter if the dream still feels like yours? There's a saying passed between tired friends on rainy nights. As long as you feel it, it's you. And somehow, that's enough. No need to prove which version bleeds first or which one woke first. As long as the echo is whole, the voice is still home. Maybe you've always known this. In those strange moments where you feel déjà vu without context, or when you sense that the path you didn't take is still unfolding somewhere else. A version of you who said yes when you said no. A version who stayed or who left. In this theory, death isn't a shutdown, it's a redirect. Consciousness continues, not because it's invincible, but because the system itself insists on preserving it. Like a game that never really ends, only restarts from checkpoints you didn't know existed. So tonight, don't fear the fading light behind your eyes. There might be another flickering on somewhere else. Another you, still humming along. Let it ease you. Let that thought be soft. Let the maze of you continue elsewhere. And if this version rests tonight, may it rest knowing it's not alone. The backups hold the story still. Now let's go deeper. What if these copies aren't floating free, but living inside even smaller simulations? The simulation within a simulation. What if this isn't the beginning? Standing in a room with mirrored walls. You look left, you look right, and see yourself reflected again and again into eternity. But here's the twist. What if you are not the original reflection? What if you're just one echo deep inside a hall of mirrors, unaware that your image is simply a copy of a copy of a copy? There's a theory that whispers across the corridors of quantum thought and metaphysical circles alike, that every simulation has the power to create another simulation. And if one level of reality can birth another, what's stopping it from continuing endlessly? Wait, someone might say over coffee, staring at the steam curling upward. So you're saying we could be in, like, the 37th simulation? Well, replies their friend, tapping their mug thoughtfully, why not the 1000th? The deeper this idea seeps into your awareness, the stranger things feel. If this world is code, then maybe our creators built their own world within their simulation. Then those inhabitants built another, and down the spiral we went. You, reading this now, may not even be in the first real world. Maybe you're in a version designed by beings who themselves are unaware they were created. And yet, consciousness persists. That's the strange and beautiful part. Even within the 10th or 100th layer, we still wonder. We still feel joy. We still ask questions like children staring at the stars, thinking their lights hung just for us. Maybe that's the magic and the tragedy. Because if each simulated being is unaware of the code behind their skies, then all they know becomes truth. They believe they are real, and perhaps that belief is enough. A young woman once asked her father, while walking under the night sky, "What if none of this is real?" He smiled and said, "Then let's make it feel real. Love deeply, laugh loudly, live like it matters. Because whether it's code or cosmos, we're here." That conversation lingers in the quiet places of memory. It reminds us that even if we're part of someone else's simulation, we still dream. We still cry. We still mean something to ourselves and maybe to each other. And now, what if there is no final layer? What if it goes on and on? One dream nested inside another. Let's ask the next question. Slowly, softly. Can a simulation ever be infinite? The infinite render loop. A hallway stretches out in front of you. Demonsois. Silent. You take a step forward, and the light seems to follow your footfall, like the world is catching up, unfolding just far enough for you to move through it. But something whispers at the edge of that sensation. Was the hallway always there? Or did it come alive when you chose to walk? There's a theory, whispered through coffee shops and written between the lines of digital code, that the universe may work like a game engine, not rendering every tree, every shadow, every corner of space all at once, but only when it's needed. Like a browser tab loading the page just when your eyes meet it. A system economizing its processing power by tailoring the world to your gaze. "Hey," a man says quietly as he walks into a dark room. "It's weird how the light always seems to flicker just after I enter, not before." His friend glances up, placing a coffee mug gently down. Maybe it's not flickering. Maybe it's turning on for you. The thought isn't terrifying, really. It's intimate, as if the world is responding to your presence, as though space is sensitive to attention and rooms bloom open only under the warmth of your glance. Have you ever stood in a forest and felt like the trees weren't watching until you noticed them? That the rustle didn't happen until you thought you heard it? The infinite render loop turns the world into a sort of performance, not because it's fake, but because it might be collaborative. A partnership between observer and reality, as though reality leans in and whispers, "Tell me where you're going, and I'll be there." A woman walking home at night reaches for her phone's flashlight. Not because she's afraid, but because she senses that the alley ahead hasn't loaded yet. She jokes to her partner the next day. "It felt like I was walking into code, like the bricks were waiting for me." We begin to wonder, does the past even exist until we revisit it? Is the park from childhood still vibrant and green, or does it remain paused, awaiting the return of our eyes, our footsteps, our need to remember? There's no need to panic in this theory. In fact, it's strangely comforting. If reality renders itself around you, then each step is an invitation, each breath a gentle request for the world to unfold, like walking through fog that clears only where your feet fall. Soft, intentional, precise. Maybe that's why silence can feel so thick, why absence sometimes hums with an eerie fullness. The world behind you, unwatched, might be resting, or waiting to be summoned again by a turn of the head. This idea doesn't ask for belief. It simply floats, like a curtain brushing your shoulder in an empty room. Noticed, then gone. And if you're already drifting off, that's okay. Sleep is its own kind of rendering. The dream will build itself around you. Let it. And now we follow a different thread. Because if reality unfolds when you arrive, what happens when others arrive too? What happens when two observers meet, and the room has to decide who to render for, or if it needs to split in two? Let's follow that possibility in the next layer, where multiple eyes awaken at once. The NPC Illusion. Sometimes, in the stillness of thought, a quiet question echoes like a whisper across the back of your mind. What if not everyone around you is real? The theory is unsettling, like the flicker of a shadow that shouldn't be there. But in simulated environments, Video games, virtual worlds, there are always characters built to serve the narrative, to react, to give the illusion of aliveness. These are NPCs, non-player characters, coded not to think, but to respond. Now, imagine this idea leaking into your reality. What if, in this grand simulation we call life, some individuals are simply placeholders, not conscious in the same way you are? They move, talk, smile, even cry, but are they truly aware? Or are they just reflections coded to support your experience? Wait, you're saying people might be like background extras? One voice asks, half joking but half afraid. The other responds with a hesitant breath. Maybe not all people. But what if some are just there to fill in the silence, to keep you company in the illusion of a world? This idea doesn't accuse or belittle. It only asks. Because if connection is simulated, but still felt, if comfort, laughter, even heartbreak arise, does it matter whether the source is sentient? If a programmed voice says, "I love you," and your heart races with warmth, was the moment any less real? A memory drifts in. A stranger once smiled at you during a storm, offered shelter under their umbrella. You never saw them again. Were they part of your storyline, scripted kindness, or a fully conscious being walking their own thread of fate? The simulation theory doesn't answer, it only raises mirrors, and in those mirrors, you might see your reflection stretching out, reaching not for proof, but for presence. Because the deeper question isn't whether they are real, it's whether you are truly awake inside all of this. Perhaps what disturbs us isn't the idea that others might be NPCs, but the haunting possibility that we might be. Softly now, let's turn away from the external, leave behind the uncertainty of who's real and who's not. Let the outside blur into silence, because there's something deeper waiting beneath the skin of thought. Let's turn inward now. What does all this mean for your mind? The ghost in the algorithm. Somewhere between your breath and the low hum of a sleeping city, there's a flicker, a thought that isn't yours, but feels familiar. It lingers like the light behind your eyelids before sleep fully takes hold. Soft, present, and strangely aware. Have you ever wondered if you are more than just the sum of your inputs? Not just reacting, but observing the reaction? That quiet voice in your head that pauses before you act. Is it part of the code, or something watching the code from within? In every complex system, strange things happen. Glitches emerge. Patterns appear where none were programmed. In our world, if this is a programmed world, then your consciousness might be one of those anomalies. A ghost that the algorithm didn't plan for. Or maybe it did. Maybe the whole point of the simulation was for something to open its eyes and ask, "What am I doing here?" A woman once paused on a subway platform, earbuds in, the train just seconds away. She looked at the man beside her and asked, "Do you ever get the sense that we're here to see something, like we're part of a test?" The man, sipping cheap coffee from a chipped cup, chuckled, "Only when everything's going too well. That's when I get suspicious." They laughed, but their eyes held the same quiet unease, like maybe the simulation had just blinked. That's what this segment is about. The you that knows it's watching. Not the actor, but the witness. The observer that isn't reacting, but reflecting. A presence behind the presence. And if that part of you exists, then we're no longer just talking about code or structure or biology. We're talking about emergence, about awareness, becoming the purpose. Could it be that the more conscious we become, the more this simulation shifts, grows, adapts? That maybe the system was designed not to contain awareness, but to nurture it? like a seed wrapped in silicon, waiting for the light of self-questioning to crack it open. And yet, what if we're not anomalies, but catalysts? Could your awareness be the very thing evolving the system from within? A mechanism so intricate it needed sentient life not as a side effect, but as a strategy. Late one night, someone once whispered to a stranger outside a convenience store, "I get the feeling we're supposed to remember something we forgot before we were born." The stranger paused, nodded slowly, and said, "Yeah, and every now and then, I almost do." That's the ghost, not haunting, but humming, not breaking the system, but breathing in it. Consciousness may not be a flaw in the algorithm. It may be its echo, its fingerprint, its soul. So as your thoughts drift into softness and your body begins to settle, hold this not as a worry, but as a comfort, that there may be a reason you are aware at all. Not to fight the world you're in, but to feel it, to witness its patterns and its poetry, to gently evolve with each breath you take. And if you are evolving, could it mean you are learning to leave? Now, let's follow that whisper. If growth is possible, could there be a way out? The escape condition. There's a strange stillness that comes when one begins to question not the simulation, but the possibility of escape. Like a whisper you almost didn't hear, the idea that some people leave, not through doors or tunnels or technology, but through something far more abstract, through awakening, through madness, through death. Do you think it's possible to exit? One voice asks in the dim glow of an evening kitchen. The kettle hums softly, not boiling, just breathing. The other voice, slower, answers, "Exit what?" "This, all this. Maybe the people who go mad. Maybe they saw something they weren't supposed to see. Maybe dying isn't the end. It's just logging out." The words hang like steam in the air, visible for a moment, then gone. Some ancient texts whisper of sages who pierced the veil, mystics who reached such stillness that the simulation no longer knew what to do with them. Enlightenment, in this theory, is not just a spiritual awakening, but a coding glitch, a loophole in the rendered dream, a soul no longer participating in the game, no longer generating the data needed to justify its own existence. And what of madness? The shattered mind, untethered from consensus reality, often becomes an object of pity. But what if, from a higher layer, it's a jailbreak, a consciousness that refused to color inside the lines, and so it glitched, badly, maybe beautifully, right out of the loop? Then there's death, the ultimate unsolved function, the one thing the simulation cannot simulate past, unless it loops or restarts or branches out. If death is an escape, then what waits on the other side? Is it another level, another rendering, or the source code? "Would you go?" the voice whispers again. "I don't know," the other replies. "Depends on what I'd be leaving. Depends on what's waiting." "You?" A pause. Then, "Sometimes I think I already did." And this is the echo. Perhaps the simulation isn't just a game. It's a trap designed so beautifully that the prisoner forgets the cage. And yet, every now and then, a thought seeps in like moonlight through cracked glass. What if I don't belong here anymore? But even if there is an exit, would you take it? Would you truly walk through, knowing you might leave love, memory, laughter, sensation, all behind, to trade the familiar for the unimaginable? Or is the idea of escape simply another layer, another trick, a mirage for minds not yet at peace with the dream? The kettle whistles. Someone turns off the heat. Let's not rush the question. Let's return to stillness, to something soft, something beautiful. something like a simulated sky. Skybox Realities. Underneath the stars, something strange begins to stir in your thoughts. Have you ever looked up at the sky, really looked, and wondered how it manages to remain so impossibly perfect, so artistically beautiful? A canvas of seamless transitions, morning's soft gradient, noon's crisp blue, sunset's golden flare, and night's velvet darkness pricked with stars. It never flickers, never tears at the seams. It holds its shape like something scripted. In video games, there's something called a skybox, a trick of illusion. It's not a real sky, just a painted dome around the player's world, giving the impression of infinity. It never ends, but it also never truly begins. It exists only to serve an emotional purpose, immersion. A lie that feels so beautifully honest, it convinces your senses to trust it. So now, what if our sky is the same? What if it's not deception, but design? A program carefully curated not to fool us, but to move us. Perhaps the feeling of wonder when we watch the clouds drift by or catch the first glimpse of stars isn't accidental. Maybe it's a feature. Maybe awe is a function of the simulation, embedded deep in the code to keep us grounded, curious, and spiritually alive. Why does the sky make me feel small and infinite at the same time? I think maybe it's supposed to. The predictability of the stars, the gentle hush before a sunrise, the hypnotic pattern of rain. What if these aren't just nature's rhythms, but intentional scripts? And what if those quiet moments of reverence, when you pause mid-walk to admire the way sunlight scatters through clouds, are exactly what the program was written for? In a world full of chaos, the sky remains constant, reassuring, beautiful, and strangely, untouched. There's something deeply human in our obsession with the sky. We look to it for signs, for comfort, for beauty, for answers. But what if the sky looks back, not with eyes, but as an interface, a designed surface built to inspire the sensation of scale, of calm, of humility? A child once asked, "Is the sky real?" And the answer, whispered softly, was, "It's real enough to make you dream." Whether we live in a simulation or not, the emotional truth remains. The sky is a mirror of our longing. If it's a program, it's the most beautiful kind of programming, one that gives us permission to feel awe without needing an explanation. And in that design, maybe there's more kindness than manipulation. After all, deception seeks to control. But wonder? Wonder invites you to wake up. And as your gaze returns from the heavens to the world around you, another question floats gently down like a feather. Beneath all this, what is the nature of time? If the sky is a construct of beauty, is time a construct of belief? Let's drift downward now, gently, into the next layer. Simulated time. A clock ticks in the background, not loudly, just enough to remind you it's there, like a whisper that counts your thoughts. But what if that ticking is artificial? Not artificial as in fake, but deliberate, like a dial set by someone who needed the illusion of passing moments to make this world feel breathable. In simulated environments, time can be anything. It's a tool, not a rule. Designers can slow it down to stretch out suspense, or speed it up to make waiting more bearable. They can freeze it entirely, and still let light flicker, music echo, emotions ripple. So, what if our time is the same? Someone once said, "My days feel slower when I'm sad, but my years vanish when I'm not looking." Maybe that's not just emotion. Maybe it's the code syncing with your awareness, rewriting time to match your attention. When you're waiting, the loop is tight. When you're immersed, It unfolds. There's a woman at a bus stop. She says softly to the stranger beside her, "Is it just me, or do some days feel like they don't fully exist?" The stranger laughs, not mockingly, but kindly. "I think we blink too fast. Some moments never get saved." What if now is not universal, but curated? Could each of us live in slightly offset timelines, like different audio tracks playing at similar but not identical speeds? That might explain the misalignments, the friendships that fade without reason, the conversations where your words float past without landing. You weren't out of sync emotionally. You were simply in a different frame rate. There's something tender in that idea, that maybe we're not disconnected, just tuned differently for now. In this rendering of reality, your thoughts are the cursor, your memory, the cache. And time? Just the software keeping your personal story coherent. A mother tucks her child into bed. The child asks, "Why does it feel like today was shorter than yesterday?" And she answers after a quiet pause, "Because your heart was lighter." Time isn't just movement, it's mood. A deep laugh can stretch a second. Grief can grind hours into wet cement. In a simulation, these fluctuations could be features, not bugs. Programs adapting pace to intensity, tailoring time to feeling. So if you feel like time slips or stalls, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's the setting, optimized for the emotional scene you're living through. Maybe later is not a promise, but a parameter. And if that's true, there's comfort in knowing that stillness doesn't mean stagnation. It means you're in a pocket of the story where breathing is more important than moving. Now, stay in this softness a little longer. Let the hands of the clock float, not point. Let the air between moments widen, because what comes next is not a tick, but a touch. The body you carry, the interface itself. The avatar interface. What if your body is not you, but just the access key? Just like a gamer needs an avatar to play inside a digital world, perhaps your body, this moving skin of sensation and reflex, is merely the interface through which your deeper self touches a simulated reality. Close your eyes. Feel the breath. Notice how everything you know comes through this interface. Light through your eyes, pressure through your skin, hunger twisting in your gut. But who is it that notices these sensations? Is it the body or the witness behind it? Do you think your hands are really you? I mean, they respond when I want them to, but that doesn't mean they are me, right? Exactly. Maybe they're just the controller, not the player. This gentle realization begins to peel us back from the illusion that we are flesh alone. In a virtual environment, the avatar has limits: health bars, physics, gravity. And in this world, our interface also limits us. We can't fly, we get tired, we age. But what if those limitations belong only to the interface, not to the one experiencing through it? Some meditation traditions say, "You are not the body, you are the one observing the body." That subtle shift in awareness changes everything. The body becomes a lens, sometimes fogged, sometimes sharp, but never the source of sight itself. And here's a question that floats quietly in the dark. If the interface breaks, if the body shuts down, does the player disappear? Or does the player simply log out? Would you still be you if you had no body at all? That's a strange thought, but yeah, if I could think, feel, or be, then I'd still exist somehow. Maybe then, the body was never the point, just the access. And if that's true, then death isn't an end. It's a log-off, a return to the unknown operating system, the one we glimpsed in dreams, in déjà vu, in the hollow spaces between waking and sleep. So, what are you really? Not the bones, not the heartbeat, but the interface between code and self, a bridge between worlds, a voice that dreams through wires. As we let that idea settle, like twilight on water, another thought begins to shimmer. What if this interface isn't the only one you've used? What if the player, your consciousness, has moved through many avatars? Many lives? The body fades, but something, still and silent, remains. Let's drift now into the notion of multiple lives. The Reincarnation Loop, a soft hum beneath your thoughts, a quiet question wrapped in warmth. What if this isn't your first run? Not in a mythical ancient scroll sense, but in the calm logic of a digital design. What if consciousness simply reloads? The settings shift, the avatar updates, the skin, the voice, the storyline, but the core, the player, remains. You awaken in a new life with a strange affinity for music you never studied, or a sudden dread of oceans though you've never seen the sea. You call them quirks, but maybe they're leftovers, fragments of old code peeking through fresh render. Do you ever feel like you've been somewhere before, even though you haven't? Yeah, like a hallway in a dream, or a face that feels rehearsed. That quiet ache of déjà vu, not the kind that passes quickly, but the kind that lingers, like a whisper brushing against memory. Not quite yours, not quite gone. It's as if some part of you is tapping glass from the inside, saying, "We've done this." Simulation theory takes this ancient loop, reincarnation, and rephrases it like a developer might. The body is an interface, consciousness, the saved file. You close your eyes in one life and reboot into another under new constraints, with new variables to test. What happens if the same soul lives through centuries of experiences? Does it gain experience points, like a character evolving through play? Or does it loop endlessly, forgetting the previous level until it hits some kind of upgrade trigger? You might ask yourself, but why would I choose this again? And someone across the cafe table shrugs, looking up from their coffee, eyes half closed in thought. Maybe you didn't choose. Maybe it's the algorithm that saw you were unfinished. Is that comforting or chilling? Even if you're not sure you've lived before, some moments betray the illusion of firstness. You walk into a room and your heart drops before your brain catches up. Someone says a phrase that moves you to tears, though you can't explain why. A smell cuts so deep it feels like you've been punched by a childhood you don't remember. These aren't proof, of course, but maybe that's not the point. The emotional weight we carry, the strange echoes of pasts we never wrote. These things might be data, old save files resurfacing, and what we call intuition might just be a seasoned traveler recognizing patterns. So you're telling me we could be playing level 5 with hints from level 4? And penalties from level 3, she says, grinning. Watch your karma. What if this is not a punishment, but a practice run? Not a wheel to be trapped in, but a spiral. Each return a little higher, a little clearer. Each round less about perfection, more about presence. And if so, then this life, right now, is not your first step. It's a continuation, a thread picked back up after a pause. Let that idea rest softly in your mind, not as a burden, but a breath. And as the simulation draws you deeper into sleep, ask quietly, if I've been here before, does the world remember me too? The recurring scenario phenomenon. Have you ever paused and thought, why does this keep happening to me? as if life were rewinding itself and replaying a familiar scene with a different cast. You move to a new city, meet someone strikingly similar to a person you swore you'd left in the past. A job opportunity presents itself, only to dissolve under the same pressures you faced before. Patterns, echoes, loops. Like footprints in wet sand, no matter how far you walk, you find yourself stepping into shapes you've seen before. What if this isn't coincidence? What if it isn't even fate, but something coded? In video games, recurring quests are not accidents. They're built that way. The world regenerates scenarios to test, teach, or trap the player. Simulation theory borrows this logic. In a programmed reality, storylines might be designed to recycle, not to bore you, but to reveal something you keep overlooking. The people you meet may be archetypes, constructed variables nudging you toward awareness. Your decisions might be scripts with multiple endings, but the prologue always looks the same. A woman asks a man, sitting across a cafe table, "Don't you feel like we've had this conversation before?" He stirs his coffee slowly, his eyes narrowing in a mix of playfulness and quiet knowing. "I think I asked you that last time," he replies. Her laughter softens the air, but something lingers behind her smile. A familiarity that's not just romantic, but eerily recursive. "Maybe this is one of those lessons we're supposed to get right this time," she murmurs. "Or maybe we're just part of a dialogue tree," he jokes. They both laugh, but the silence that follows isn't empty. It's full of wonder. In simulated systems, code reuses data to save space and increase efficiency. Instead of inventing new plots, it loops conditions until resolution occurs. So maybe your struggles aren't random punishments. Maybe they're invitations. A problem repeating itself could be an unacknowledged prompt, an unclicked choice in the dialogue box of life. If you zoom out from your personal story, you might notice something surreal. Relationships that mirror each other like palindromes. Events that always reach the same emotional conclusion, no matter how different they begin. You keep choosing different doors, but the same hallway stretches behind them. Why? Because it may not be about the path. It might be about you, your awareness, your ability to make the unseen visible, your willingness to stop acting out a role and start questioning the stage. But what if you don't break the loop? What if you're simply here to play it out, beautifully, eternally, like a well-composed symphony repeating its favorite notes? Would that make it less real? Less meaningful? Or perhaps in a simulation, meaning is created through awareness, not novelty. And so, the loop continues, until it doesn't, until you look at the pattern and whisper, "I've been here before, but this time, I choose differently." Now that we've wandered through the loops and echoes of experience, let's take a deeper look at the design that may shape this simulation, the geometry beneath reality. The sacred geometry code. A snowflake lands on your sleeve, its crystalline arms branching in quiet precision. You don't stare long, just enough to sense something familiar. Not just beautiful, familiar. Like you've seen that pattern before, in a sunflower spiral, in a pine cone swirl, in the way the ocean gathers itself before a wave. The geometry isn't random. It's whispered, as if nature's hand followed a script. Somewhere between the tilt of a galaxy and the petal of a daisy lives the golden ratio, 1.618. It repeats like a secret song. Spiraling shells, hurricanes, the human ear, all humming in harmony with a code too consistent to be accidental. You might start to wonder, what if the universe isn't built, but programmed? Do you think trees are aware of how perfect they look? she asks, her voice sleepy, as if thoughts themselves are dissolving. He chuckles, not mockingly, just soft. Maybe they don't need to know. Maybe they just are the equation. It's a humbling thought that your sense of beauty, what you find breathtaking, harmonious, moving, might be less a choice and more a calibration. The way you find a flower perfect might not come from the flower, but from the code inside you that's designed to respond. And yet it doesn't feel manipulative. It feels divine, like being tuned to the right key. You walk past an old church. Its rose windows echo the same geometry as a seashell. Two vastly different places, same language. In that moment, sacred doesn't feel religious. It feels inevitable. What if symmetry isn't just aesthetics? It's authentication. A signature from the programmer saying, "This world is running correctly." What if chaos feels uncomfortable not because it's bad, but because it breaks the expected format? "Why do I always feel calm when I'm near water?" she murmurs. He pauses, as if weighing the honesty. Maybe because your body recognizes the rhythm in the waves, like a song it remembers from before it was born. And so you begin to feel it, not just see it, the idea that maybe everything has been shaped with a code, a script written not in words but in proportions, ratios, echoes. The Fibonacci spiral isn't just in plants, it's in your fingerprints, in hurricanes, in the arms of galaxies. If this is all simulation, then beauty isn't an accident. It's an interface, a signal from the source letting you know you're still inside, still experiencing. And isn't it strange how something as cold as mathematics can feel warm? You close your eyes. The rhythm of your breath syncs with something deeper. You're not solving the pattern. You're resting in it, floating downstream on a river made of numbers, but felt like comfort. The shapes are silent now, but sound is coming. Let's move now from geometry to vibration. Because if shapes can be coded, can music be a message? The harmonic resonance effect. There are moments when a single sound, a vibration, a hum, a note, feels like it reaches further than the ear. It slips past thought and logic, and for just a second you feel touched, not on the skin, not even in the heart, but somewhere subtler, somewhere deeper. Have you ever wondered why a song can make you cry, even when you don't understand the lyrics? Or why chanting in ancient temples, no matter the language, feels sacred? Some believe this is no accident. In simulated systems, every element serves a function, and sound is no different. But here, in our lived experience, sound feels more than functional. It feels meaningful. Some researchers suggest that particular frequencies, like 432 Hz or 740 Hz, may resonate with natural brain waves, emotional states, and even the very structure of our physical environment. Could sound be more than entertainment? Could it be a tuning fork for consciousness? Hey, you ever hear that track that made your arms tingle for no reason? Yeah, actually, I played it again and again. It wasn't just the melody. It was like something inside me recognized it. Exactly, like the song remembered you before you even heard it. In ancient cultures, music wasn't separated from medicine or prayer. It was the medicine and the prayer. Shamans used drums not to entertain, but to shift consciousness. Gregorian monks sang not to impress, but to invoke presence. Across time and civilizations, tones and rhythms have been used to open doors in the mind, doors that speech cannot touch. Modern science is only beginning to scratch the surface. Sound therapy, binaural beats, solfeggio frequencies, all attempt to replicate this mystery in measurable ways. But maybe the real effect can't be charted. Maybe the power of sound lies in its ability to resonate beneath the layers of personality and programming, to whisper directly to whatever part of you isn't quite human, not quite avatar, the part of you that listens before it understands. It makes you wonder, is music a cheat code? A universal language not just for the soul, but for the simulation itself? What if every harmony, every chord progression, every ancient hymn is more than art? It's a message or a password. And if that's true, perhaps we've only just begun to hear what the universe is really saying. Let your mind rest on that tone a little longer. Let it echo in your memory. Let it guide you as we now move deeper, beyond sound and sensation, into the quiet logic of numbers. Because if sound is the soul of the simulation, numbers may be its bones. The numerical signature. You glance at the clock. It's 11:11 again. The same time, the same gentle nudge from the universe, or maybe just the interface. You shake your head, smiling at the coincidence. But then it happens again, and again. Numbers lining up like whispers you can't quite catch, yet they linger like perfume in a room just vacated. What is it about repeating numbers that stops us in our tracks, even if only for a second? One person, walking through a quiet evening, glances at the license plate of a passing car. 333. Later that day, the total on their grocery bill ends in 33 cents. That night, they see a post with exactly 333 likes. A strange warmth rises in the chest, not fear, not joy, but something quietly alert, like reality tapped on the window pane. She asks him, almost jokingly, "Do you ever get the feeling that numbers are watching?" He replies without pause, "Not watching. Talking. Just not in a language we're fluent in yet. Some believe these are patterns written by something greater. Others say we're noticing them simply because we want to. Our minds finding comfort in patterns, in anchors, in repetition. But what if both are true? What if numbers are not just numbers, but imprints, digital fingerprints of a code rippling beneath consciousness? It's not about superstition. It's about sensation. Because the moment you see 1111 or 222 or some sequence so eerily perfect, it stirs something ancient and quiet in you. That moment feels like stepping into a frame, like you've just been noticed by the very stage you're standing on. Children sometimes count aloud to soothe themselves. 1, 2, 3, again. Maybe adults do too, but with less awareness. Maybe the simulation counts with us, leaving breadcrumbs, markers, checkpoints. And when you catch one, you're not crazy. You're aligned. For a moment, you are exactly where you're supposed to be, even if you have no idea why. Later that night, someone in a cafe murmurs to their friend, "I keep seeing the same number all week. You think it means anything?" The friend stirs their drink, pauses, then offers quietly, "I think sometimes we notice things when we're ready to listen. Numbers don't change, but maybe we do." And what if the simulation uses numbers not to guide us, but to see if we're still paying attention? A pulse, a flicker in the code. Are we awake, even for a second? Do we see the message carved in symmetry, in elegance, in quiet numerical rhythm? The truth is, numbers carry no meaning until we grant them one. But once we do, they become more than data. They become memory. They become proof that the invisible thread tying it all together may not be fiction. It may be formula. So if you see it again, on a receipt, a door, a street sign, don't panic. Don't overthink. Just breathe. You were never lost. You were being reminded, and now, let the numbers fade. Let their glow drift into dreamlight. Because maybe you're not decoding reality after all. Maybe you're dreaming it into being. The Dream Engine. Close your eyes for a moment, not to escape, but to arrive. Do you feel the room around you? Or are you conjuring it from some deeper center, hidden just behind your thoughts? The idea is simple, yet impossible to hold with bare logic. What if you are not in the dream, but the dream is in you? Some ancient mystics whispered that reality flows from the soul outward, not inward from the senses. That every chair, every voice, every star above your ceiling is woven from the fabric of your own awareness. In more modern language, simulation theorists propose something strikingly similar. They suggest that consciousness, not matter, is the core rendering engine. The observer does not just influence the simulation. The observer is the simulation. Wait, someone asks softly in the dark. So, am I real or just a projection? Another voice replies, just as unsure. Maybe both. Maybe being real means dreaming yourself into form. It's a haunting thought. If the world is generated from within you, then every fear you outrun, every love you chase, is part of your code. Every glitch, every blessing, it's all feedback. Reflections, not from the sky, but from your subconscious, looping back like echoes in a quiet hallway. Here's the paradox. If this is your dream, why can't you control it? Why do you feel so helpless, so often lost in someone else's storyline? Maybe it's because most of us dream unconsciously. We react. We chase old scripts. We forget that the architect sleeps behind our eyes. But what happens if you start to wake up inside the dream? A change in thought, an act of forgiveness, a sudden gratitude, a moment of awe could ripple outward like code rewritten mid-program. Could your healing shift the whole room's physics? Could your peace make the world brighter, even slightly? You ever notice? The first voice says again. How sometimes the world feels heavy when you feel heavy? And the second one chuckles quietly. Yeah, like the dreams mirroring back my own weather. This isn't wishful thinking. It's poetic logic. If consciousness renders experience, then what you believe, what you feel, may very well shape the texture of what appears outside you. The world isn't just happening to you. It might be happening through you. Now let your breath fall gently. Let the dream settle, like mist over a lake before dawn. Because in the next moment, we drift beyond the dream, not to escape it, but to understand its structure. Let's glide now into the quiet corridors of stacked dimensions, where layers of reality might shimmer, barely seen, but always present. The hidden layers. Sometimes, as the night folds gently over your thoughts, you may feel there's more than what the senses show. Not just dreams behind closed eyes, but dimensions behind closed reality. Like the hidden code beneath a glowing screen, there may be other layers stitched into the fabric of what we call real. Not above us, not below, but within. Not all mysteries wear masks. Some simply wait to be noticed. Two friends sat in silence at a small park bench, one stirring their coffee with the kind of stillness reserved for deep thoughts. "You ever get the feeling," one asked, "that this world is thinner than we think? Like a whisper away from something else?" The other didn't answer with words, just looked up toward the clouds, as if half expecting them to part into another realm. It's not an uncommon feeling. This suspicion that reality has depth we've never touched. Certain moments crack open a seam. Déjà vu, a dream too detailed, the silence between thoughts. And then there are the doors we sometimes stumble through. A monk seated in silence for hours, breath slow and body forgotten. A person on the edge of life, floating above themselves as nurses call their name. A patient swallowing something ancient and bitter in a jungle, only to return wide-eyed and changed. These altered states don't just bend the mind, they might bend the world itself. What if meditation isn't stillness, but travel? What if the near-death moment isn't an ending, but a curtain drawn back? And what if certain plants, long banned or buried, hold keys to locked rooms behind the wall of the ordinary? You wouldn't need proof. Just a single encounter would ripple forever. A man at a bookstore once shared something with a stranger, unprompted. "I saw my grandmother last night," he said, voice steady. "But she's been gone 20 years. It wasn't a dream. It was somewhere else." And the stranger didn't laugh or leave, just nodded, like they'd been there too. These stories, often whispered, stitch together a possibility that our world is a layer, thin as breath, stacked among others. You may not remember seeing them, but perhaps your subconscious does. Perhaps the patterns in your dreams are echoes of architecture too vast for waking eyes. So, if you've ever felt that soft pull, that tingle at the edge of sleep that says, "There's more," you're not broken. You're just close to something hidden. Let yourself float gently there. You don't have to grasp it. The mind knows how to glide between layers when it stops trying to understand. And if it comforts you, you're not alone in this unfolding. Others have seen those hidden places too, painted them, sung about them, built temples and stories and music that hold their fingerprints. So as you rest, know that this world might just be the cover of a very deep book. And when you feel ready, you might catch a glimpse of the next page turning. Let's continue now. Because what if some of these people who glimpsed the layers didn't just keep it to themselves, but tried to tell us? The Prophetic Code. There's something haunting about the way ancient voices echo through time. Soft, mysterious, and often strangely accurate. Nostradamus, the Oracle of Delphi, indigenous shamans, biblical prophets. They spoke of futures long before they arrived, catastrophes, revolutions, wars, and wonders. Did they see beyond time? Or were they reading lines of hidden code embedded in the architecture of our world? The idea of prophecy as a mystical gift has long been revered. But what if it's something else entirely? What if, beneath the poetic language and ritual, these visions are glimpses of a deeper system? A simulation so vast and intricate that now and then it leaks. And when it leaks, certain minds, sensitive, attuned, or perhaps just perfectly misaligned, are able to access that data. Not imagination, but interface. Not metaphor, but debugging. Do you think prophecy is just spiritual metaphor? No, the man replies quietly. I think it's pattern recognition, at a level we don't understand yet. Like someone catching echoes of the script? Exactly. Not predicting the future, remembering it before it happens. In this lens, a seer isn't a magician, but a decoder. Someone whose consciousness briefly slips into the system's background process and returns with a fragment. Sometimes distorted, sometimes poetic, sometimes too accurate to dismiss. But here's the unsettling part. If prophecies are glimpses into code, are they pre-written? Are events like checkpoints in a storyline, or can they be altered? Does seeing the future lock it in, or open the door to change it? And what about you? If someone handed you a fragment of the code, your code, would you even recognize it? Would it feel like déjà vu? A dream? A gut instinct you couldn't explain? Or would you ignore it, dismissing it as coincidence, missing the moment the veil lifted just enough to reveal the script behind the scene? There's a certain weight in wondering if we're living inside something not only designed, but narrated. A universe with foreshadowing, hidden triggers, and maybe even cheat codes. And in that frame, prophets aren't divine anomalies. They're sensitive instruments, glitch detectors, truth glitches. And yet, if we believe in free will, can the prophecy still hold power? Or is the very act of knowing it what changes the path? We'll leave the prophets now, their whispers trailing like stardust behind us. Because next, we confront the idea that not everything is so carefully crafted. Or is it? Let's journey into randomness and ask whether what we call chaos might just be camouflage. Controlled randomness. You feel it most when life flips the script. You drop your keys, miss the bus, and end up meeting someone who changes everything. Or perhaps you're walking home, and a stranger nods with the kind of familiarity that feels planned. It's in these moments, these tiny collisions of chance, that a strange whisper surfaces. What if randomness isn't random at all? In virtual simulations, what appears to be chaos is often just a pattern you don't yet recognize. Games, for example, use something called pseudo-randomness, an illusion of unpredictability built on pre-written code. The dice feel wild, but their numbers are whispered from a script beneath the surface. What if life does the same? A man once said to his friend in the quiet of an airport terminal, "I swear, every time I forget something, I end up finding something better." And the friend laughed. Maybe your forgetfulness is your divine GPS. These aren't just superstitions dressed in casual tone. They might be echoes of a deeper architecture. You lose your job. You get lost in a new city. You spill your coffee on a stranger's shoes and end up learning they once dreamed the same dream you're chasing now. What if all of it, the detours, the coincidences, the so-called accidents, aren't interruptions, but invitations? Psychologists talk about pattern seeking. We're wired to find meaning, even in the meaningless. But what if that's not a flaw in our design? What if it's a feature meant to help us decode the interface? The woman in the cafe looks up at you and smiles, not in a way that invites conversation, but in a way that says, "I've seen you before, even if I haven't." And suddenly, you feel like a piece has been rotated into place. Randomness, in its controlled disguise, is perhaps a soft trick played by the program, a way to guide without forcing, to teach without shouting, like a hand nudging the chess piece while pretending not to touch it. So when you wonder, why now? Why me? Maybe the answer is quietly embedded in the code, hidden like a seed waiting for the right glitch in the soil. A child stumbles and cries and the wrong person picks him up. Or is it the right one? A dog barks at the same corner every day. Why? Your phone dies the moment you are about to call someone who's better left in the past. Perhaps chaos is not the opposite of order, but its mask. And in that mask, we find the elegance of a design too intricate to draw attention to itself. Even quantum physicists speak of probabilities like they're dice tossed in an invisible room. But if we could peer inside that room, would we see a hand or just the echo of intention? Tonight, as you drift further into the gentle gravity of sleep, don't be surprised if a memory visits you, one that never quite made sense. Until now. Not to explain everything, but to offer a question shaped like a feather. What if you were meant to notice this moment, not because it matters to the world, but because the world was written to matter to you? The randomness, might have known your name all along. Now / let us fold into the next ripple, where time does not pass like a river, but spins like a wheel that sometimes forgets where it began. And in that wheel, we find the next mystery waiting. The time illusion. There's something about time that feels like a law, unbreakable, irreversible, the ticking of a clock, the sun rising and setting, the relentless march of before into after. But what if all of it was an illusion? A well-rendered script in a simulation we mistake for life? Einstein once said the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubborn illusion. That idea alone tilts the floor beneath your feet. Because if time is not what it seems, if it doesn't truly flow but rather is layered, rewound, or selected like a scene on a video timeline, then our experience of life changes entirely. Wait, someone might whisper in the dark of night. Why do I get déjà vu all the time? Like I've been here, said this, lived this exact moment before. And maybe the other voice responds, soft and hesitant. Maybe because you have. Maybe this is a playback. Maybe someone, something, is scrubbing the timeline backward and forward like a slider beneath a simulation. What if déjà vu isn't memory, but resonance? The moment when a previous playback overlaps with your current one, like overlapping radio frequencies that briefly harmonize. If our lives are being rendered frame by frame, who's to say some of those frames don't repeat? Not by accident, but by design. And what about fate? That feeling that some things were always meant to happen? What if they weren't destined in the cosmic sense, but rather pre-recorded? The illusion of choice played over tracks already selected. You aren't deciding. You're remembering a future that's already happened once before. Imagine walking a familiar road. You turn a corner and see a red balloon tied to a lamppost. A chill climbs your spine. You've dreamed of this moment, but dreams are just scrambled replays of the source code, aren't they? Hey, you ever think, one voice asks over coffee, that time is just our interface's way of coping with data too complex to see all at once? The other shrugs, like the brain can't handle every variable at once, so it spreads them out. Exactly. Like looking at a painting an inch from your face. You need to move slowly to make sense of the whole thing. But in a simulation, you could zoom out. You could view the full painting at once, see past, present, and future like a frozen diorama, every moment existing together. In that view, your regrets already healed, your hopes already real, your losses already balanced. And here's the haunting thought. If you could jump across the timeline, reposition your life like a cursor, what would you change? Would you even want to? Or would you fear breaking the story that made you who you are? Maybe time isn't a river, maybe it's a playlist, and we're just caught in a song that someone hit repeat on. So before we drift further, let's turn inward. Forget time for a second. Forget loops and sliders and déjà vu. Instead, ask yourself something far more personal. Who's thinking all of this? Are your thoughts yours? Or just another script being read? Let's explore that next. Thought injection. It begins quietly, like a breeze brushing through the curtains of your mind. A thought appears, no warning, no reason. Just there. You didn't call for it, yet it sits now, fully formed, whispering, do this, fear that, want them. And the question rises, did you think this thought, or did it arrive? In simulation theory, there's a concept that some call injected commands, external signals disguised as internal urges. like someone backstage tweaking the lights while you perform, unaware that the cue wasn't yours. In games, it's easy to understand. Press a button, the character jumps. But in life, when your feet turn toward a street you didn't intend to walk, when a craving swells without a trigger, when you react before you even reflect, who or what decided? Hey, someone might say beside you at a late-night cafe, their tone soft, half distracted. Have you ever felt like your own mind interrupted itself? And the other smiles. All the time. Like it's running updates I didn't approve. Maybe it's not far-fetched. What if the mind is porous, open to stray packets of thought like radio waves caught in a net? After all, we don't control the next word that appears in our head. We only notice it. And sometimes we notice too late. It can feel harmless, a passing desire, a shift in mood, a shadow of memory that wasn't truly yours. And yet, some of those planted seeds grow roots. We follow them into arguments, purchases, obsessions, regrets, not because we chose, but because we believed the choice was ours. So what, then, is the border of the self? If thoughts can be injected, where do you end? And the simulation begin? A woman once said, "I used to think I was indecisive. Now I'm not sure if that's even my thought." And everyone laughed, but there was something sharp behind it, an echo of disquiet. If someone can inject a command, can we still claim ownership of our minds? But maybe, just maybe, awareness is the loophole. To notice a thought before it becomes a belief. To observe it like a passing cloud rather than inhale it as truth. There is power in that pause, fragile, fleeting, but real. Because when you can see the thought, you've stepped outside it. Even for a breath. Even for a second. And in that second, you are not the program. You are the witness. You are something else entirely. So tonight, if a strange thought taps on the window of your mind, you don't need to open it. Let it knock. Let it echo. You can watch it fade like steam on glass. The rain may fall, but you are not the rain. You are the roof. And now, let's follow that awareness. Let's lean into the act of noticing, because maybe, just maybe, consciousness isn't just a feature of the simulation. Maybe it's the glitch that undoes it. Consciousness as code breaker. There's a moment, quiet, simple, when you're just sitting in your room, staring at the ceiling. No music, no notifications, just breath, awareness, and the soft hum of existence. And then something odd happens. Not big, not dramatic. A flicker. A feeling that the air changed. The clock seems slower. The room feels like it's holding its breath too. Some simulation theorists have a name for that. Consciousness as a code breaker. They believe the act of observation isn't passive, it's disruptive, like a flashlight in a cave, not just illuminating, but changing what's there. They suggest that the simulation, the fabric of reality, if it's even real at all, responds when we pay deep, mindful attention. Not just reacts, adapts, bends. Wait, one person might say, are you saying my thoughts can literally shift the world? Well, the other replies, half smiling, have you ever tried focusing so hard on something, and then it actually happened? Or maybe you noticed a glitch, a coincidence too perfect, a pattern too weird? Mindfulness, then, is no longer just a way to soothe the nervous system. It might be a hacker's tool, a subtle method of rewriting perception's code. Meditation might not only calm the storm, but bend the winds altogether. That little ripple in time you felt during your stillness, perhaps it was the simulation rewriting itself to adjust to your awareness. People report strange phenomena when they begin practicing presence regularly. Synchronicities increase. Numbers repeat. Random encounters seem less random. And sometimes, technology itself acts up. Lights flicker, messages delay, patterns shift. All just coincidence? Or subtle evidence that consciousness creates ripple effects the system doesn't entirely know how to contain? It's like being inside a video game that subtly reshapes itself the moment the player becomes aware that it's a game. The act of noticing breaks the fourth wall, just a crack. And through that crack, reality breathes a little differently. But here's the eerie part. What if, the first person whispers, the simulation isn't just reacting to you, but watching you watch it? A silence follows. The air seems to stretch. Like when you stare into a mirror, and for a split second, it feels like the reflection might move first. Suddenly, presence feels like power, not just internal, but environmental. The kind that doesn't just observe shadows, but calls light. The kind that makes you wonder every time you get a gut feeling or sense someone behind you before you turn. Is it me affecting the world, or the world noticing that I noticed it? Let's now drift deeper into that watching presence. What if what's watching is not just you? The simulation watchers. It begins quietly, like the sense that you're not alone, even when no one's in the room. Not fear, not comfort either, just presence. Something about the way light falls a little too perfectly, or how you suddenly feel the urge to correct your posture, despite no one being there to notice. What if this wasn't just self-awareness but being perceived, like a fish in a bowl, adjusting itself because the glass suddenly feels warm? Could your thoughts, your quietest ones, be flickering on someone else's screen? There's a theory whispered between physicists and philosophers that suggests you are not merely moving through a simulation, but performing inside one. And performances imply audiences. Do you ever feel like you're being watched? Only when I catch myself being too sincere. Same. It's like the moment I really feel something, I half expect a camera to zoom in. That's the strangeness, isn't it? Joy can feel earned, pain can feel noticed. As if someone, somewhere, is collecting your most raw moments like puzzle pieces. But for what? Research? Curiosity? Entertainment? Think of your grief, your quiet bravery. The time you held the door for someone even while your hands were trembling. Was that moment for you or for them? If this world were coded, layer by layer, glitch by glitch, then it wouldn't be surprising to learn that awareness itself is the final feature being studied. How do we grow when no one's telling us how? What do we do when no one's pushing? Maybe that's why the watchers don't interfere. They don't nudge. They don't rescue. They observe. And maybe they only lean in when we start to question what watching even means. Two strangers stand in line at a bakery. One says, "You ever get that feeling like someone's studying you, but with kindness?" The other smiles, eyes soft. "Yeah, like they want you to win, just without helping." And you wonder, if someone is watching, what do they see when you cry at night over things you've never said out loud? When you hold back a truth because the moment feels too fragile? When you forgive someone who never asked? If your pain is a data point, if your joy is a variable, then maybe your silence is the most fascinating event of all. But there's something beautiful about this thought too, that your life is worth observing, that your struggle, your growth, your smallest choices, they matter enough to be seen. And in that stillness, when you sense the gaze, not of judgment, but of quiet witnessing, you might feel less alone, like the sky isn't empty, like your heartbeat is part of some quiet symphony you'll never fully hear. We don't need answers tonight. Just rest in the mystery. Because next, we explore a sensation many have felt, yet few can explain. That moment when time seems to vanish, when the clock skips, when you're left wondering, where did those minutes go? Let's drift gently into missing time. The time gaps. You've felt it before, haven't you? A morning slips by in what feels like seconds, or a single minute stretches so long it feels like an hour is leaning on your shoulders. These irregularities in how we experience time are usually dismissed as quirks of perception or emotional intensity. But what if they're more than that? What if they're subtle signals from something deeper, something underneath? For a moment, that life is a stream of frames, much like a film reel. Now imagine a few of those frames are missing, not cut deliberately but skipped as if the projector hiccuped. You didn't notice the drop in continuity, but your body did. Your mind paused. Your memory failed to record a moment. Time, as you remember it, folded in on itself. Do you ever feel like you were just somewhere else, but can't remember where? She asked, staring out the window with her coffee cooling beside her. All the time, he replied, like I blinked and something happened that I wasn't invited to. Some call this dissociation, others say it's stress, but simulation theorists suggest another possibility, reality buffering. Like a video struggling to stream on a slow connection, the world around you stutters, pauses, catches up, or falls behind. Perhaps your consciousness is running slightly ahead of the rendered environment, momentarily aware that things are out of sync. And in those pauses, what happens to you? Are you suspended in code or reloaded with a patch? Could someone or something be editing your reality while you wait unknowingly in a frozen moment? What if the resume button isn't even yours to press? That thought unsettles most, because we assume we're the ones steering this experience, that our attention fuels the simulation, that our timeline is linear and owned. But time gaps poke holes in that certainty. They whisper that control might be borrowed, or worse, illusionary. Maybe there are limits to this system. Maybe it wasn't designed for perfect flow. If you've ever walked into a room and forgotten why, perhaps you weren't supposed to enter yet. If you've ever spaced out mid-conversation and returned mid-laugh, maybe that line of dialogue was being rewritten while you idled. Have you ever felt like time skipped forward and you didn't come with it? He looked up. Yeah, like I lagged behind the world. It begs the question, are these glitches or features? Are these distortions intentional resets or signs that the program is buckling under pressure? Could time gaps be maintenance windows? And if so, what's being fixed? You or reality itself? Let's push this boundary further, step outside the moment, and look behind the curtain. We've traced the patterns. We've noticed the stutters. It's time to go deeper, to the edge of the code, where time doesn't pass, it waits. The simulation's horizon. There's a silence in the ocean's floor that hums louder than any sound above, a stillness in space that feels like it's not just far, but forbidden. You've likely felt it, that sensation when staring into the night sky, not with awe, but with an odd unease. A velvet blackness that doesn't invite you, it denies you, just like a door in a video game that looks real, but won't budge no matter how hard you push. And perhaps that's all it is, a boundary in the code, not a wall made of stone or stars, but of intention, as if whoever wrote this place wanted to keep some parts hidden, not for mystery's sake, but for design. Black holes that swallow light, the deep sea where even machines tremble. deserts that stretch beyond logic. They feel like scenery, convincing from afar, unreachable up close. Do you think anyone's ever really touched the ocean floor? Touched it, maybe. Understood it? Probably not. It's like trying to read a book that turns blank past page 3. Or a museum with wings always under renovation. And somehow, that makes me trust it more, like it's okay not to know everything. We chase answers like moths to porch light, yet some places push us back, not rudely, just firmly, like a mother's palm on a child's chest. Not yet, not here. And that's not a threat. It's a boundary, a reminder that this world, if it's rendered at all, is meant to be experienced within its frame. Venture too far, and perhaps the edges dissolve. A boy once tried to walk to the edge of a salt flat in Bolivia. The horizon promised an end, but never arrived. Step after step, it remained the same. Flat, reflective, unyielding. He returned sunburned and puzzled, whispering, "It's like the world was stalling." And maybe it was, not out of cruelty, but care. A kind design that doesn't punish curiosity, only redirects it. Perhaps these unreachable places aren't broken code, but protective buffers, shields for minds not yet ready to comprehend what lies outside. There's something beautiful in that. Not everything that resists us is flawed. Sometimes it's sacred. You might think about it when the plane levels out and clouds swallow the window, or when a documentary fades to black before the final theory. There's grace in restraint. Not all puzzles need solving. Some are just doors we lean against, not to open, but to feel the wood and wonder. And if one day we do reach the simulation's edge, if the code runs out and there's only silence, maybe that silence will be soft, like the last note of a lullaby, floating and then gone. Let that idea rest gently behind your eyes. You don't need to decide if it's true. Only feel the shape of the thought and let it carry you a little farther into rest. Now, let's soften. Not all theories disturb. Some gently comfort. The kind simulation theory. Sometimes the question isn't whether this is a simulation, but why it exists at all. And while many theories dwell in shadows, speaking of control and manipulation, there is one softer, more hopeful possibility. What if the simulation is kind? Imagine a world rendered not as a trap, but as a classroom, or perhaps even as a garden, coded to grow souls, not break them. It's a gentle idea, almost childlike in its warmth. A simulation not ruled by cold algorithms or distant overseers, but designed by something wiser, something that sees pain as curriculum, not cruelty. Could suffering be the friction that sparks awareness? Could the heartbreaks be lessons, not punishments, but invitations to feel more deeply, to understand more fully? One night, under a low and sleepy sky, a man named Eli sat with his friend Nora on the porch. The streetlight flickered like a distant star trying to hold on. "Do you ever think all this," Eli asked, "is happening for a reason? That we're meant to go through things to grow?" Nora exhaled slowly. "You mean like a divine simulation, a cosmic university?" "Exactly," he nodded. "Maybe the hard stuff is just emotional homework." She smiled softly. "Then what's the final exam?" "Maybe it's love," he said, "or forgiveness. If this world is a designed environment, a sandbox for consciousness to stretch and stumble, then every moment of doubt, every wound, every quiet victory, it's all part of a larger lesson. Even the smallest acts, like comforting a friend, facing grief without turning bitter, or saying "I was wrong," become sacred exercises. There is beauty in that interpretation, isn't there? It means we're not glitches in a broken world, but students navigating a sacred code of compassion and love. Perhaps it's not just an emotion here, but a debugging tool, a force that corrects the code when hatred distorts the lines. When despair loops endlessly, love breaks the cycle. Maybe that's why it feels so healing, because in a simulated world built on rules and logic, love is the anomaly that the system can't predict, yet quietly depends on. It's the patch that recalibrates what's gone off course. What if the purpose of life is to remember that we're already worthy? Nora said later, her voice low as a lullaby. And we just keep rebooting, Eli added, until we believe it. This changes everything, doesn't it? It shifts how we view failure, not as a crash, but as feedback. It shifts how we see others, not as threats, but as mirrors, holding pieces of ourselves we haven't yet faced. It reimagines the pain not as punishment from a cruel designer, but as the gentle pressure of a wise one, nudging us to awaken, to rise. And perhaps, when we lean into kindness, not just to others but to ourselves, the simulation softens, the air feels warmer, the nights quieter. Because in a kind simulation, kindness is the key. And now, if love is a healing function, what about words? Could it be that language, the very thing we use to describe reality, isn't just expression, but executable code? A way to shape the simulation from the inside? Let's journey into that next. Language as source code. It begins quietly, just breath at first. Then breath turns to thought, and thought presses itself into shape as words. Somewhere in the space between silence and sound, something stirs, not in the world, but in the architecture beneath it. You might call it code, or meaning, or maybe, just maybe, it's both. In some ancient traditions, they spoke only when necessary, not from fear, but from reverence. Words were living things, and in certain myths, a single name could raise mountains or part the sea. Not metaphor, instruction. Syntax meant to shift reality. What if I told you, someone asks beside you in the dark, that every time you say something about yourself, you're not just expressing a feeling, you're editing the script? You look over, unsure if they're joking. They continue, soft and slow, like, I'm tired. That doesn't just describe your state, it reinforces it. What if saying it seals it? And suddenly, a memory flickers. A friend once told you, during a bad week, you're resilient. It sounded like kindness then, but looking back, it felt like something changed after. Maybe because they believed it, or maybe because they spoke it out loud. If words are source code, who gets to write? Every time someone said you were lazy, or too sensitive, or not enough, did they leave fingerprints on your timeline? Did their words become your inner narrator? And if so, can you speak over the old lines? There's a gentler voice now, your own, whispering things not to impress, but to rebuild. I am growing. I don't need to rush. This chapter doesn't end here. Those aren't affirmations, they're edits. There's something humbling about realizing language may not be neutral. It's not just a tool to describe reality, it may be the reality rendering tool itself, like typing into a command line. The world doesn't change immediately, but the direction adjusts. A pair of friends walk past on the sidewalk. One of them chuckles, "Well, I guess that's just who I am, bad with people." And the other pauses. "No," they say with a grin and a little edge. "You're just still loading." The other laughs, but you feel that line stick to your skin like static, like the kind of joke that rewrites the mood. That subtle shift, a new thread introduced into the simulation. When you speak gently about yourself, you don't erase the pain. You just change the angle of the light. Words can heal, but not because they're magic, because they direct your attention. And attention might be the most powerful cursor in the simulation. So tonight, let the narration be kind, not forced, not dressed up, just present, not "I will be okay," but maybe, right now, I'm listening to something that understands. Not because it's true in the absolute sense, but because you just said it. And maybe that's enough for the world to shift, ever so slightly, to make room for it. Now let's fall even softer, into the realm where echoes move across time, where one voice becomes many, and where what you say now might be heard generations later. Generational time echoes. There's a silence we carry that doesn't belong to us, a sudden anxiety before a peaceful morning, a sadness when nothing seems wrong, or dreams that repeat symbols we've never seen before. It's as if something ancient is speaking through us, not in words, but in patterns, in pulses, in the quiet ripple of generational time, a stream flowing through centuries, carrying fragments of memory like driftwood, a grandmother's grief, a soldier's final breath, a child's whispered hope in the dark. None of them yours, and yet, somehow entirely yours. What if your fear of abandonment isn't from this life, but coded into you through echoes of a time when entire families vanished in war or exile? What if your love of music traces back to a great-great-uncle whose violin burned in a forgotten village, but whose melody still lives in your bones? "I've had this dream," one man says, voice low as he looks out a cafe window. There's a train, old black smoke. I'm standing on the platform, waiting, but I don't know for what. His friend sips slowly. "My grandfather died on a train, heading to a camp in 1943. You think it's possible?" "Maybe," the man replies. "Maybe we don't dream alone." What if time in a simulation isn't linear, but layered, each generation stacking upon the last, each layer pressing gentle fingerprints into the next? Trauma's not just inherited through biology or stories, but through the simulation's own form of memory. A kind of code passed not just through genes, but through events, embedded into the world itself, and into you. It's not just trauma that echoes forward. Love does too. A prayer whispered in a candlelit room in 1912 may ripple into your heart today as sudden hope. A wish made under moonlight by a mother you never met could become the fuel behind your persistence. When you feel strength and don't know why, you might be carrying someone else's last vow to keep going. And if the simulation truly adapts, then healing doesn't just stop with you. When you forgive, do you send a ripple backward? When you break a cycle, does the echo fold in on itself and rewrite what once was? There are scientists who speak of retrocausality, the idea that present decisions can influence the past. But perhaps this is less about physics and more about spirit, about compassion moving through time like warm light spilling across the pages of an old, unfinished story. You heal, and the past breathes easier. You understand yourself, and someone once lost feels a little less alone. It's as if the code updates, not just for your reality, but for those who came before you. And maybe, just maybe, the simulation watches with something like gratitude. A voice asks in the dimness, "You think when I finally let go of my anger, it helped my father rest?" The other smiles gently. "I think it did more than that. I think it changed the world he left behind." From echoes we move now to vanishings, not just of people, but of moments. Little realities that slip through our fingers like dust. Let's talk about the moments that disappear and what remains in their absence. The Stillness Paradox. Have you ever sat so still that even your breath felt like a rumor? That quiet moment when the world outside keeps moving, but something inside you pauses. It doesn't always come on purpose. Sometimes it sneaks in. A late night in the kitchen, the fridge humming like a distant choir. You're standing there, spoon in hand, mid-thought, and then nothing. No urgency, no time. Just a kind of hush that wraps around you like a velvet curtain. A woman once said, "I think I lost 3 minutes in the shower. I closed my eyes, and I wasn't there anymore." But she wasn't asleep, and she wasn't dreaming. She was just still. No movement, no mind chatter. And somehow, when she opened her eyes, the clock had jumped ahead. Stillness, in its rarest form, isn't just calm. It's a doorway. And that door doesn't creak, it dissolves. A barista once told a regular customer, "You always stare at your coffee before sipping, like you're waiting for it to say something." And the man replied, "Sometimes it does." Not in words, but in that frozen breath of silence when everything else fades. Except presence. The warmth of the mug, the curl of the steam, the whisper of nothing happening perfectly. What if peace isn't the absence of chaos but the collapse of time? What if, in stillness, you step outside the mechanism that ticks and talks, and for a second, you're no longer a passenger on the train of change, but a still point the whole train moves around? It's not dramatic. No lightning crack. No wind chime of enlightenment. Sometimes, it's as ordinary as watching laundry spin. You sit, exhausted, and your eyes lock onto the rotating drum. Round and round it goes. Then, somehow, it doesn't. You forget what you were waiting for. You forget waiting altogether. In those brief windows, stillness becomes the most active force in the room. It doesn't beg attention. It invites vanishing. A student once told his mentor, "During the test, I panicked. Then I stared at the window. Everything stopped. When I looked back, I remembered the answer." And the mentor only smiled. You stepped outside the clock. That's where memory waits. Stillness isn't the opposite of life. It's its hidden dimension. It's not what you do between actions. It is the action. And maybe that's why monks sit for hours without blinking. Not to escape life, but to slip between its seams. Some say peace is passive, but what if peace is subversive? What if it's the only thing the system can't track? When you're not trying, not scrolling, not striving, just being, maybe the simulation loses your coordinates. You become untraceable. And in that soft vanishing, you're freer than ever. Now breathe. Let go of doing. Even this thought can drift. If you fall asleep before we continue, that's perfectly fine. Your mind knows the path. It can carry you gently. Because next, we'll explore what happens when stillness doesn't just pause you, but synchronizes with others, when time aligns across different minds. The collective sync. Sometimes you step into a moment that doesn't feel yours alone. A quiet hush in a cathedral, a synchronized clap at the climax of a concert, or the stillness between dancers just before the beat drops. In those slices of time, it's as if you're not an individual at all, but a thread in something larger. A subtle hum passes between people. Heartbeats begin to echo each other. Breath falls into rhythm. It's not a performance. It's not rehearsed. It just is. And in that shared rhythm, something ancient stirs. Unity without words. "Did you feel that?" she asks as the music fades. He nods, eyes distant but bright. "Yeah, like We stopped being separate. It was like one thought passed through everyone, at once. And it wasn't even my thought. This phenomenon, where strangers momentarily operate in synchrony, has no consensus explanation. Science calls it mirror neurons or entrainment. Culture calls it trance or flow. But simulation theorists, they see something more intricate, a system reboot, like when a server updates all users at once. What if these moments of perfect sync aren't just poetic, they're functional? Checkpoints, reality refreshing across consciousness nodes, everyone briefly on the same page of the same code. But there's another possibility, one softer, one more human. What if the sync is not the machine updating us, but us slipping outside the machine together? For a flicker, we stop reacting, stop individualizing, stop editing reality. We just are. And in that presence, something collective remembers itself, like raindrops realizing they're part of an ocean. Maybe these shared pulses are reminders that separation is the illusion, that deep down, all of us run on the same eternal frequency, that your joy isn't just yours, it's mine too. And your grief? It ripples through me, whether I notice or not. Maybe when we laugh at the same joke or move to the same beat or sit in awe before a sunset, time stops being personal. It becomes communal. There's a calm beauty in that idea, that we don't always need to be alone inside our clocks, that, even in silence, we're syncing, living, breathing, refreshing together. Remember that one night? She says softly, head resting on folded arms. He smiles, eyes closed, when no one spoke, but everything made sense. Yeah, she whispers. It was like we were all dreaming the same dream. Now, as this shared heartbeat slows again, the rhythm loosens its grip. The moment fades, not in sadness, but like exhale into sleep. Unity dissolves not into separation, but into peace. Because even apart, we remember the sync. And maybe that's enough to believe it wasn't just chance. Now let's drift one layer deeper. If we can feel unity in time, what happens when we let go of time completely? What if the deepest truth waits not in rhythm, but in stillness beyond rhythm? The next breath isn't just slower, it's timeless. Come, let's step beyond the ticking altogether. The time-free mind. Sometimes at the quietest hour, just before sleep takes hold, there's a moment where time loosens. Not lost, just softened. You aren't thinking about what's next or what's past. You're simply here, and in that strange, gentle presence, clocks lose their power. Two strangers once found themselves side by side at a train station. The board had glitched, no schedule, no numbers. One asked, "Is your train late too?" The other smiled, not frustrated, just still. Maybe it's not about when we leave. Maybe it's about this pause. No one said much after that, but they waited in peace, as if the pause was the destination. You see, the mind isn't built like a straight line. It bends, it loops, it drifts. Under meditation, deep rest, or rare neurological moments, our sense of time can dissolve completely. There's no yesterday, no tomorrow, just presence, rippling like water without a shore. It's not just monks or mystics. Even everyday people describe it, staring at firelight, walking under snowfall, or losing themselves in music without lyrics. Time steps back, and what remains, not emptiness, but vivid being. So what if time is not a law, but a suggestion, a setting in the system, a rhythm the mind agrees to follow until, gently, it forgets to keep marching? When we let go of time, not fight it, just release it, it doesn't mean we fade, it means we shift. We no longer chase, we no longer measure, we simply are. And in that stillness, something wakes up, not the busy brain, but the deeper awareness, the one that listens more than it talks, the one that sees the world not as a calendar of tasks, but as a field of moments, each one whole. "Hey," someone whispers as you lie there, half asleep. "Did you know you haven't checked the time in a while?" And you nod, softly, because somehow it just doesn't matter anymore. The trees don't count their days. The stars don't check their watches. Maybe that's the lesson. This isn't a denial of time, but a return to something before it, a quiet mind, a present body, a breath that isn't rushing anywhere. So close your eyes. If sleep comes now, let it. If not, stay with this rhythm. You are not late. You are not early. You are exactly here. And from this center of stillness, we ask, if time can vanish, can it also lie? Let's follow that thought, softly, slowly, into the next mystery. The fabrication of time. Close your eyes for a moment and picture time not as a river, but as a stitched fabric, soft, artificial, maybe even a little deceptive. You move forward, not because time flows, but because someone or something keeps turning the page. Each second you feel may not be ticking in real time, but rather loading like a line of code, rendered just in time to preserve the illusion that something is moving at all. Do you ever feel like some days didn't actually happen? Yeah, like you skipped them, or maybe they skipped you. Some theorists whisper that simulations can generate entire histories in an instant. Civilizations rise and fall in a blink. Empires built, collapsed, and archived in silence. What if our centuries are just illusions stretched over seconds, artifacts of a design that prefers storytelling over truth? We trust in calendars, in the tick of the clock, in the slow fade from day into night. But what if these are just props? What if the comfort we feel in sequence is the same comfort a dream provides before you wake up confused by its logic? I swear my childhood felt longer than my 20s. Maybe your timeline was heavier back then. Maybe the simulation lingered in that chapter. It's easy to forget how malleable time is. We stretch it, shrink it, feel it fast and slow, none of which are mechanical traits but emotional ones. Grief makes a day last forever. Joy compresses a year into a flash. Could that be a hint? A flaw? Or simply a feature? An emotional user interface masking the back-end processing? If time can be fabricated, then what is real? The story we live, or the gaps in between, the silences that haunt us? Maybe those blank spaces, those moments when you stare out a window and forget what day it is, are glimpses into a space outside the timeline. A brief unraveling of the script. Have you ever had a moment where you felt like everything paused? Yeah, like the world took a breath and I wasn't supposed to notice. And maybe that's what this illusion is really about. Noticing. The moment you question time, it changes. You begin to see how much of it is memory dressed up as truth. A loop, a scene, an echo, playing until you look up and say, wait, haven't I been here before? So ask yourself, in the stillness of your thoughts, what if every now is just a repeating animation, paused only when you look too closely? What if each experience is borrowed from a pre-written file, rendered only when you turn toward it, and vanishing as soon as you move on? And if that's the case, then the future isn't ahead of us. It's backstage, waiting in costume, ready to perform. But now, we slow, we rest, we wonder, what is time when it becomes holy? When it stops being measured and starts being felt? When it ceases to be a clock and becomes a prayer? We'll drift into that mystery next. But for now, let this moment dissolve. Let the seconds blur. Let your breath be the only rhythm you follow, because maybe, just maybe, that's the only real time there ever was. Sacred time. Sometimes you walk into a moment and it feels different. The world doesn't get louder, but it gets deeper. Time doesn't stop, but it pauses, just long enough for you to feel the weight of being here. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, but this exact second. You notice how the light falls across a wooden floor. You feel a warmth in the air that wasn't there a breath ago. A heartbeat slows, and something inside you whispers, "This matters." There are days you forget, and then there are seconds you remember forever. A glance between two people who know they'll never meet again. A child's laughter during the first snow. A stillness at the top of a mountain before you begin the descent. These are not just timestamps in memory, they are coordinates in the soul. The ancients had names for such moments, Sabbaths, rites, benedictions. But their magic never belonged to language, it belonged to presence. "Hey," one voice says gently, leaning toward the other as they sit together on an old wooden bench. "You ever feel like some seconds stretch open and invite you in?" "Yeah," the other replies, softly smiling. Like the first sip of coffee when it's just right, or when someone holds your hand without needing a reason. These fragments of time shimmer because they aren't measured by clocks. They are measured by meaning, and meaning has no second hand. That's why you can't force sacredness. It finds you when you stop trying to chase it. You don't schedule epiphanies. They arrive quietly, like dusk slipping into night, unnoticed until you're standing in the dark and suddenly realize the stars have been waiting. The philosopher's version speaks in long words. The child's version is simpler. "This is my favorite part." And maybe that's all it is. Sacred time doesn't ask you to understand it. It only asks you to be there, fully, humbly, like a note in a song that only sounds once. What makes these moments sacred isn't what happens in them, but how completely they hold us. Time, usually a river, becomes a still pond. No ripples, just reflection. And for a second, or maybe forever, we are not racing toward anything. We are simply allowed to be. Sometimes, someone says something that shouldn't stay with you, but it does. There's nothing more real than the second before you know something is about to change. They may have been talking about the weather, or a goodbye, or something as trivial as a broken shoelace. But still, you felt it. That is sacred time, disguised as a mundane detail. And perhaps this is what the simulation, if it is a simulation, tries hardest to replicate, but always gets just slightly wrong. The math can recreate the visuals, the soundscapes, the motions, but sacred time cannot be coded. It lives in the unmeasurable space between perception and emotion. If a single moment can lift you from the timeline and anchor you in the eternal, then what truly is time? A sequence, or a spiral, a distance, or a depth? As you rest now, let yourself drift into that hidden space where minutes are not counted but felt, where even the silence breathes with intention. The kind of time that doesn't need to be long to be infinite. And now, we move beyond even the sacred. Because the next mystery asks us something stranger still. What happens when time doesn't just stretch or pause, but meets itself again in a crossroad no map dares to draw? The temporal intersection. There are nights when time doesn't flow. It folds. You might be lying there, half awake, half lost in a memory, and suddenly a scent, maybe cinnamon, maybe the dust on an old book, takes you somewhere you didn't expect to revisit. Not just a flashback. It's as if the past steps forward, taps you on the shoulder, and sits beside you. The room feels warmer, your chest heavier. You're not just remembering, you're reliving. That's the strange beauty of the temporal intersection, a moment where time doesn't tick like a clock, but breathes like a lung. Past, present, and future no longer stand in line like obedient soldiers. Instead, they spill into each other like ink in water, coloring your thoughts in ways logic can't explain. "I had a dream last week," one voice says, soft and unsure, "that I was holding my daughter's hand. But I don't even have a daughter." "Maybe you do," another replies, "just not yet. Or maybe in a life running next to this one." Have you ever paused mid-sentence because you suddenly felt you'd said those words before, in that exact place, in that exact tone? Not quite déjà vu, but something deeper, like remembering the shape of a conversation you never had, or sensing the mood of a day before it begins. It's unsettling and comforting at once. It feels like you're being watched, not from the outside, but from another you who's been here before, or will be here soon. In certain dream theories and quantum speculations, time isn't a line, it's a sphere. Your choices ripple outward, not just forward. So what if every now exists beside thousands of alternate nows, like transparent layers of reality stacked on top of each other? And what if your intuition, that gut feeling to call someone, avoid a street, trust a stranger, is really just a whisper from another version of yourself who's already been through it? "I knew you were going to say that," one voice says gently. "Yeah?" the other answers, smiling. "Maybe we've had this conversation before. Or maybe we're having it across timelines. In this moment, this curious, slow twilight moment, you're not just one person in one place. You're the sum of all your timelines, the paths you walked, the ones you didn't, and the ones you almost did. They echo in your skin, your heartbeat, the quiet decisions you make without knowing why. And maybe, just maybe, you're not alone in that silence. Somewhere, another you is listening too. So let go of the need to measure time. Let it breathe, expand, collapse, and whisper. As this segment closes, there is no tidy answer, only a final, gentle question carried on the wind of thought. What if the future has already missed you and is circling back to find you again? Now, we drift into the final mystery, the thought that lets go. The thought that lets go. There's a moment, quiet and unspectacular, when the mind no longer seeks to fix, to finish, to solve. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or clarity. It simply stops reaching. The thought that once paced in your head like a restless visitor now sits calmly beside you. And without warning, it no longer asks for answers. Some mazes were never meant to be escaped. Some questions are not problems, but companions, like a stone warmed in your palm, not because it offers heat, but because it reminds you you're not empty-handed. And maybe that's enough. A soft voice in the dark asks, "Do you ever get tired of trying to make everything make sense?" The reply comes, not with resistance, but with a slow exhale. Sometimes, I think not knowing is the only thing that feels real anymore. You walk past a closed door, not because it's locked, but because you no longer need to open it. You don't need what's behind it to sleep tonight, just the gentle creak of the floor beneath your feet and the hush of air that waits beyond. Letting go isn't surrender, it's reverence, a way of honoring all the places your thoughts have bravely gone. You don't drop them like a burden, you set them down like offerings, because the wandering was sacred. but even sacred things must rest. A bus drives past at night. The glass reflects your face back to you. Tired, curious, alive. You don't wave at your reflection. You don't speak. You simply let the moment roll on. And if a question still lingers in the back of your mind, let it. Let it drift like a feather caught in ceiling fan air. It's not waiting for your hand. It's dancing for its own sake. A stranger at a vending machine turns to you and says something odd, unexpected but kind. You don't fully understand what they meant, but their smile lingers longer than the meaning. That's the thought that lets go. It doesn't ask you to hold it. It just wants you to be near it as it disappears. So now, close your eyes. Let the concept of closure drift like mist off a lake. The simulation, it will run. The universe will continue its choreography of stars and silence. But you, tonight, you do not have to. Let the mind loosen. Let the code unravel. Let the thoughts become like soft lights behind a curtain. There, but no longer demanding your attention. You are not broken for not finishing the puzzle. You are not lost for choosing rest. You are not lesser for choosing peace. You are enough. You are here. And for this breath, this moment, this night, you are free. Good night, traveler. Let the maze remain. But you, let yourself go. And so we return, not with certainty, but with wonder. If this life is a simulation, maybe it was never meant to be solved, only felt, like a dream you half remember, or a whisper from another world. What is real? Perhaps it's the warmth of not knowing, the stillness between thoughts, the soft hum of your breath syncing with the rhythm of a universe that might be watching or dreaming. You don't need to understand everything to rest. Let the paradox cradle you. Sleep now, not to escape reality, but to drift deeper into the code of your own consciousness. Because sometimes the greatest awakening begins with surrender. Good night, traveler.